calling this a payment by 1,000 paper cuts because it's on the installment, but make sure to, on your old devices, turn all of your alarms off because it remembers, and we had alarms going off on all the different devices on all the different parts. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay, stepping away. Death by 1,000,000 paper cuts. I get it.
So has anybody designed an office hour shirt that we could all wear for the holiday party?
There you go. All right,
I'm on
stand
it.
by. Stand by.
Something with reindeers.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah. Hold on one second here.
Is it an ugly sweatshirt? John?
Hey everybody, welcome. Hey everybody, welcome to Office Hours. Good to have you here. If you see a link down below on YouTube, that's the Zoom link. You can actually come in and join the conversation. If you're here as an attendee and you're looking at all of these fine panelists and you're thinking, I could add something to this. I know some things that they don't know. Well, then join us. Come and join the panel. You're more than welcome. You just got to make sure you have good internet, good video, and good audio. But we'd love to have you, and we love having new panelists and some old panelists coming back to join us. So that's really great. So so it's really great to have all of you here. We open the doors at 6 o'clock. I'm starting to open them a little early, but I'm not here. I'm just kind of letting everybody kind of start to mill about. So just knowing that we're going to start playing with that idea, and then by the way, for the panelists who are new, it's really important while I do this not to do anything other than just listen to me talk. If you do this thing with your hands or put up text and everything else, really makes it hard for me to concentrate. So I'm doing this off the top of my head, just so you know. So anyway, so if the first hour, of course, we're depending on your comments. If you have questions or comments that you'd like to put in here, this is the time to do it. If general questions, if you have questions for the second hour, and today we're talking about education, then go ahead and put edu : and we'll save those for the second hour. And then the second hour today, as I said, is education. We have kind of a special second hour, except for Sundays. So Mondays are kind of a wild card. Tuesdays are audio. Wednesdays are video. Thursdays are, again, kind of a wild card, but although we're going to be bringing more artists in for that. And then Friday is more event production. So those are the kind of the areas that we're working through. If you want to share this with other folks, the best thing to do is use the link that I'm going to put into Makana here. If you're watching this and you don't know what Makana is, then you're in the wrong place. So we don't do any chatting actually in Zoom. You'll see links in the chat to take you to where we're actually talking. So anyway, that's it. Bill, are we ready for a couple questions? Looks like we've got a couple stacking up.
Yeah, we do. We've got a good bunch here early this morning. Jeffrey Reyes starts from the Bronx, New York. Alex, it's been a while since we've done Unreal Engine. Are you still a fan, or do you consider it one of those technologies, as you mentioned this week, like Dolby, that we can get ahead of and provide unique solutions?
I have to admit, I'm in a quandary about Unreal. I think that real-time 3D is going to be a big deal. I think it's going to be very important when it comes to AR, which I think is probably going to have a big year next year. The concern I have right now with Unreal specifically, and one of the reasons we backed away, is that the fight that it picked with Apple, I think cripples it, and so I think that it's going to have a real impact, because you already saw in the last keynote Apple mentioning Unity directly, and that is the beginning of that process. Where I think that Apple's probably going to push Unity pretty hard. They were supporting Unreal. They're not supporting them anymore. And I believe that Apple will probably be in the pole position when it comes to AR as we move forward. So if Apple's not supporting it, I'm not clear that it in the long run is going to succeed, for what we're doing. I think that, Apple, if you look at the phones, if you look at future hardware devices that are rumored, that, Apple is going to be in a very clear position there. And so I'm not clear that now. I think Unity's doing a lot of great things, and we may still go down that path. But one of the reasons I kind of took a pause is just to see how that turns out. I think that they made a huge unforced error there. Like, there was no reason for them to go down that path, and they shot themselves in the foot a couple times doing that. And so I'm watching, to see how that turns out. So anyway, those things to think about. And since no one else raised their hand, we'll move on to the next question.
Okay, Paul Wallace here in the panel says, what's a good low-cost mixer board like the Zoom U22, U24, U44, and so forth, or a preamp like the Scarlet 2i2 for just 4 mics and inputs? And he also wants to talk about the differences or the comparison between a preamp and a mixer, pros and cons of going in either of those directions.
Since no one's raising their hand, I'll give you my opinion. My opinion is that I prefer to spend the money. You don't, if you spend money on a mixer at the same price, you're not going to get the same preamps, so you want to spend more money if you're going to have something as an input device. I think you want to look at that. I think that my complaint about the Scarlet, as someone who's on the receiving end of people using Scarlets, is just that the gain is low, and the low end Scarlets, the under $200 Scarlets, are not great, as far as how they sound, and we deal with a lot of them having lots of issues. So I tend to look a little sideways at them specifically, but in general, that's kind of my approach. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, like the models that Paul mentioned are all interfaces. Like these interfaces do have preamps built in, but they are not mixers; they're interfaces.
Well, and all mixers have preamps, right? All mixers that have inputs, those are the preamps, right? So those are the preamp. Every mixer has a preamp. The question is whether you have a mixing capability, right?
Yeah, so these are just interfaces, so they cannot mix signals in the box.
Right. And go ahead, Courtney.
I was just going to say, it depends on a couple of things. One is the gain of your microphone. If you've got a microphone with a lot of gain, then it becomes less problematic if you use a cheaper mixer, because you're working at a lower gain level on the mixer. You want less likely to hear the system noise. And a lot of even the cheap mixers, like the one I'm using today, have, fairly decent preamps. They're not the level of quality of sound devices, of course, but they're certainly usable for Zoom, and there's so much, processing going on in a Zoom communication that, you may not be able to hear the difference as long as you've got a microphone with a good hefty output. If you're using a dynamic mic, it becomes much more crucial to have a good preamp.
Muted.
I was like, how am I talking and not getting to 30? I was turning down my mix a little bit there. Anyway, the one thing that to think about also is whether you're using original sound or not. We were talking about this before the show. I wouldn't automatically turn on. We used to automatically want everyone to turn original sound on, but Zoom does a pretty good job of basic noise reduction, of taking a little bit of the analog noise that you might get through your system and just removing that. It does a really good job of that. And so if you don't have a high-end system, my recommendation is often to at least listen to yourself on the other side of a Zoom to see what it sounds like, or have someone listen to it, or turn off original sound, actually, so that you can let it do its work and keep it as a quieter show. Go ahead, Jeffrey, and then Mickey.
So as for mixers, you have the lower end mixers, the 4 or 5 channel, which some podcasters will use, and that's Pile actually makes a multi-channel mixer in the 1 to 4 channel range, on a company called Alto, ALTO, which also does that. And those are the 2 main ones that I come across when people are asking for very low cost situations. So they're not going to be great. They'll have the USB input, and they'll be very manageable if you know what you're doing on the board.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, along the same lines, on if you have a little more budget, take a look at the Allen Heath ZI-10. It's I believe an 8-channel board with 4 preamps, and the rest are line ins. And it's also a 4x2 interfaces, so you can get 4 channels into your computer and get 2 channels out of the computer into the board. So
now
it's a pretty flexible one.
As you get into that price range, would you pick the ZI-10 or something like a Behringer XR12?
What's the price range of the XR12? Because the ZI-10 is, I think, in the
it's like
350.
Yeah, 350. And the XR12 is in the 389 range.
Oh, I didn't know there were Behringers that are in the of that kind in that price range. I'll have to take a look at the specs, but so I can't
Yeah,
really comment.
Yeah, the XR, I mean, the XR series that Behringer has there is pretty nifty. You know, the XR12 is the smallest one. There's an XR12, I believe, an XR16, XR18. We've used a lot of the
Kasi
XR18s.
the XR18 doesn't have an interface, does it?
They don't have interfaces. They
Yeah,
have
so
their iPad.
if you need,
It's an iPad interface.
no, I mean
So
like an
it's
interface to a computer, like USB.
no, I do believe that they do have
Oh,
USB interfaces. Yeah, yeah. I mean that's
I'll
and
have to
so
take a look at it.
yeah, they're pretty nifty nifty setup there. But you do need to control them. I believe. Well, the only way we've controlled them is with iPads. You know, but the only reason that my biggest complaint about the XR series is the way the channel works for delay is you add it as an FX plug rather than just have it in the channel as a delay. And that drives me crazy. And so I don't use them that often when I need delay, but we've used them a lot as kind of glue for comms and other things like that. Go ahead, Paul.
Okay, so so far I've learned that Scarlet gain is low. Courtney likes sound devices. Jeffrey likes Pile and Alto, and Alex likes Behringer X12. But I'd like a rebuttal from.
I didn't say I liked it.
No,
I didn't say I liked it.
Okay, okay. Then I'd like two things. I'd like a actual open the envelope and pick a winner from Jeffrey, and I'd like John Preto to defend the Scarlet, because that's what he uses.
Behringer X32. That's my winner.
There you go. And then John.
I use the Scarlet on this machine. I have an X32 sitting right here, Paul. And then I have in my studio a Claret Pre-8 Octi Pre-8, which is a nice piece of gear.
Next question.
Moving along, this is Claudio out of Rome, and I hope I'm parsing your question correctly, Claudio. Is there a second-hour episode, or could we do one, similar to showing the minimalist and best ways to learn basic streaming with something like the setup that we talk about here a lot on the show? And that's kind of the sense of, I think, what he's going for. Hopefully I'm interpreting that correct, Claudio.
Yeah, put that in the second hour. I'm going to be combing through, for everyone. Saturday is usually when I comb through the second hours to figure out what we're doing for the next couple weeks. And so, and we are going to, now that I'm have a little bit of time, and try to get our teams kind of up to speed again to help them do that on their own. But I, this is good day to put up stuff. I think that'd be a good Friday session to do, is just basic streaming and talk about basic live streaming and so on and so forth. So, but make sure to put it in there, because I'll forget. Like if you don't put it in the second hour suggestions, not for the teams that are there, not the bottom one, but the second hour suggestions that are near the top of Discord. If you don't put them in there, I won't remember them. Like the thing to know about me is that when I go into meetings with clients, I almost always have a producer in those meetings, because I don't remember anything that I said. I'm just
Would that be
present
Jeffrey
to
or
the
Sky
conversation.
responsible for getting that into the other thing? Because I don't think I can push it over into that.
No. It's just for people. People just type into their second hour suggestion section.
Oh, okay.
In Discord, just make sure to punch those things and then vote on them. Because when I see something that has like 8 votes or 10 votes or 12 votes, I take those much more seriously than ones that are just suggestions. Go ahead, Sky, and then Mickey.
Yes, I'll scrape the question. I'll throw it where you asked.
Well,
No, it's not my responsibility or job, but
Yeah.
happy to do it. And Jeff from Kansas City has kind of started a concept of working together and workshopping together this question, and he's calling it Zoom Kitchen. And he's meeting. Jeffrey knows more about it than I do. I just attended yesterday, and it's just practicing nitty gritty. Jeffrey.
Yeah, I was on yesterday, and we came up with an interesting idea to get a better resolution on video for people that need to do any type of recording. And that is to use, if the person is knowledgeable enough to do this, they set up their machine with a second screen experience on their computer, and then they do a screen share rather than use their gallery view video. They screen share, and then you end up scraping that through the desktop. It goes at about 24, 25 frames a second at its best, but you can get up to 1080p or better with that method.
I'm thinking he should have called it a lab rather than a kitchen, but I guess you experiment in both places.
A kitchen's just a lab that you can eat. where you can eat. That's how I look at it. So anyway,
Where's Chris Fenwick? That's
yeah,
a t-shirt.
yeah.
That's a t-shirt phrase of the day. Alex
Yeah,
Lindsay.
that is a
Anyway,
t-shirt.
so Mickey, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just looking at the specs of the XR12, just going back to the previous topic.
Yep.
Yeah, it looks like it doesn't have an interface. It does have a USB port where you can record 2 tracks to like a flash
okay.
drive.
Right.
But it doesn't seem like it could
Doesn't
act
pass
like
all the
an,
channels. We've never tried
yeah.
it. I have to admit, we haven't.
Because
needed
yeah,
to.
you can record 2 tracks to the flash drive or play back 2 tracks from a drive, but you can't hook it up to a computer.
Okay. I thought it could. I haven't needed to. I have to admit. So I just thought. I think I look at anything that costs more than $300 and expects it. If it's got a USB connection, I expect it to be able to connect to a computer. So I probably.
But yeah, like to answer your question, like if I needed an interface, then of course I wouldn't go with that. But if I didn't need to use it as an interface, then I think I would go with the XR12 just because it has some effects built in, some pretty useful effects built in, like delay and all that.
Right. By the way, to go back to zigzag, back to the question we were just talking about high resolution capture. One of the things that I do a lot of is needing to use a switcher, but I want to switch my entire program, but I want the resolution that I would get from screen share. And the way I do that is I create a make movie with QuickTime, and then I capture the QuickTime window, do a screen capture of the QuickTime window. You'll get a low frame rate, but you'll now have a full switcher running into it. So when I do training around motion or something like that, I will do it that way. I get the resolution. You get 10 or 15 frames a second because it's screen share. If you have the ability to get to 720p, I don't bother because it's probably enough resolution to look at most of those things. But and at 1080p, you definitely don't need to do it. But that's another way to get that. And the resolution depends on the resolution of your screen share depends on how big your QuickTime is. You just keep on making the QuickTime bigger, and you can line it right up to 1920 by 1080 if you work at it. So it's a kind of a funny little way to pipe a switcher in at full resolution, but you are giving up frame rate because of what you're doing. One thing I will say that we've been really successful with the rooms that we kind of got pushed up against was we've had a problem for years of people being able to present their deck. They want to present their deck. They don't want us to do the deck. They want to do their deck. And we need to get them as a video. And that has been like this little, like, how do we make that work? And I will tell you with Zoom rooms that it works perfectly. You take 2 monitors and you say, one of them is the other person. And when you have one person coming in, one is the other person and the other is the screen share. And both those HDMIs go out, get converted to SDI and go into our router. And now we have a full resolution of the person and a full resolution of their slides. And we sit there and just cut back and forth. We can have lower thirds. We can put them everywhere we want. We can do all the things we want to do. And it's magical. Like it's a really great solution. If you're trying to figure out how do we let people present for those kinds of things, it works really well. Just as a little note. Go ahead, Annie.
Yeah, so a few weeks ago, I was doing a webinar, and I hate this screen share, like having the slide and you being really small on the bottom of things. So what I did was I created overlays, which were just covering 1/3 of the screen on my left side, and I was still there, and I was just showing the slides like that and just changing the overlays, and it was more dynamic.
The biggest problem we have is the fact that the attendees in a webinar, it works well in meetings right now, but attendees in a webinar are generally still stuck at 640 by 360. And so, if you make proper slides, that'll look fine. Like if you don't put too many words on it and too many graphics, and then we cut it, and we absolutely hate the state change in Zoom. So when I jump to screen share, I don't want it to take over my screen. I don't want it to change anything. I want the window to stay where it is. Like I don't want it to do anything. And for the user, I believe it's a really horrible experience, is to constantly be changing the state of their view window. And especially if you go back and forth between screen share and not screen share, and you'll see me do it in this even every once in a while, but it's really annoying. Now that I'm pulling all my gear back next week, so I'm going to be on the road next week, but not on the road, but in LA. And so I will be coming in from a hotel room, but after that, I'll be back with my system, and then I won't be using screen share anywore. so anyway, what? Yeah, I'm going to take a couple.
Take your laptop.
I'm going to have a couple laptops with me this time. So anyway, but yeah, it's the resolution that's kind of the killer. But once Zoom gets caught up there, I think that we'll be in a better state. Anyway, next question.
Eric Hull of Mount Vernon, Washington is in next with, is there a way in Zoom to learn exactly which settings are saved with a recurring or scheduled meeting and which settings can be changed in a meeting versus restarting the meeting?
I don't know if there's a guide for that, and I have to admit, a lot of mine is superstition. so I assume that I'm not gonna. I don't know if I'm gonna get anything new once I've created an event. Like once I've created the event, I go, I don't know if anything's gonna show up. So I'm very like before, if I'm working with a client's Zoom account, I will carefully go through their web settings and change everything to what I think it should be. And then I have to admit that if I'm brought in as an admin, I lock them all in the admin section so that they at least have to ask me if they're going to change them back, so I don't get surprised. And so then I go through and I very carefully set that, and then I create the event. Now I do believe that most of those things will, in a web setting, I believe that when the event starts, it goes and looks at the web settings and grabs whatever is the most current set of settings and does it. So I believe that that's how it actually works. But I will admit that I don't build events that way. I build events believing that whatever the web settings are, that's the way it's going to be. So it forces me to kind of go through that and really think through all their settings and make sure that they're all working. And you have to think through a lot of those things. Little things like how you're going to authenticate users and so on and so forth is something that, and that's something you can change in the web setting. So the things that you definitely can change per web setting is when you open the web, a webinar portal or a meeting portal, you've got a bunch of buttons. Those can be changed at any time to change what you're doing. When I do it correctly, those emails that you get every morning are dynamic. I'm changing those in the morning. It's part of like my morning thing to do. It should be my late morning thing to do for tomorrow, but it's always my like 5:40. I'm like, oh, I better change the text. And so so a lot of those things are fluid. There are certain things that obviously you can't change. So if you turn off things like Q&A or you turn off other things, those check marks when you created the event, those are permanent. Like once the event started, it's like, those are and anything in the web, like once you start the event, there's very little you can turn on and off in my experience. It's burned into the event. There's little things like, can people see questions that they've asked and that kind of thing, but there's very little that you can adjust, which I think is a little bit, as a user, I'd prefer to have more control. I'd love to be able to turn some of that stuff on. Like, it's really stressful to create an event for a large group, especially on an account that you haven't done before, because you know that you're going to burn in those settings. It would be really nice to have them a little bit more fluid. Go ahead, Eric.
And that's exactly the issue. I work with a lot of nonprofits that are sharing a single Zoom account. And so everybody's in there tweaking the web settings. And I would like to make an assumption that if I see a button for it in the Zoom, then those are the only settings that I can change with it.
Are you the
always?
Admin? Okay,
always.
No. But I'm saying if you're the admin, and there's not a lot of other admins, and people are changing settings, what you do is you go into the settings through the admin section, and you lock them. So you set all your settings, and you lock, and then people can't change those settings.
Okay,
so
I have to look for that.
Yeah. So there's two sets of settings. There's the setting, but there's the settings that everybody gets to see if they're creating an event. Most people can see, but there's another set of settings in the admin console these are overall settings for the entire organization. And when you change those, you have the ability to lock them, which means that unless you have admin rights, you cannot unlock them. You can't change them. And so anything that I know that I want to make sure that's absolutely there, I lock those so that even I don't make a mistake and turn them off. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, but you're talking about having multiple accounts. I'm talking about a single account.
Well, you shouldn't do that.
Well, if Zoom would stop it from happening, I would be happy.
No. But what I'm saying, what you should do, I mean, I just get two accounts. I mean, like it's $10 or whatever, $10.
These are nonprofits that don't want to spend money.
I know it's 10 or 15. Okay, well, then they're going to have events that don't work. Like it's $15 a month. It's for one extra. You let them all share one other one and have one thing. If they're not going to pay $15 a month, they're going to get what they paid for. John.
And there is a group that does discount it to nonprofits. So, it's worth having one that you know that's going to work. We share it across a number of people, and that's what we've done.
Yeah. I mean, you only need one big account. You just have, especially if you're spreading the same account across a bunch of nonprofits, you've got one that's $15 a month. That's the admin, and one that's $15 a month that everybody uses. And then you have, so for $30 a month, you have something that solves it. I mean, they're paying rent. I mean, rent costs more than $30 a month. So it's just the cost of doing these things. But they can do what, you get what you pay for. Mickey?
Oh yeah, you pretty much said it earlier. What I was gonna say, like the settings in the web interface. Once you start the event, the meeting, or the webinar, changes you do in the web interface won't take effect until you restart the meeting.
Next question.
Oh, I'm just going to throw in
Real quickly.
Eric, to Alex's point, it's 3 mocha cappuccinos.
Yeah, there you go.
That's the cost.
There you go. All right, next question.
So the Eric Cole in Mount Vernon, Washington is in with, can somebody who was ill-advised to stay at Mohave get to Catalina now? It seems that for previous versions there was a way, and he is acknowledging that Apple wants everybody to migrate to Big Sur.
Go ahead, TJ.
Yes, you can still download the Catalina update. I know it because I did it this morning. I will post the link for that update in Mukana.
Great. Next question.
Oh, moving along. Okay. Lucas Herzog of Mainz says, any recommendations for an NVIDIA GPU for Vmix, OBS, and the like? Budget is up to $250.
Jeffrey?
So for NVIDIA, there's 3 types of cards you have, and currently we're on the 30 series. So 3060, 3070, 3080. The 60 series is probably where you want to go, and you'll probably be able to find a 2060 at around the $250 price range. Make sure, and another thing is to make sure you get an RTX as opposed to a GTX, because it's about how it will play in a multiple monitor system with the RTX. So I would say the 2060 RTX, it might be a little bit more than 250, but try and squeeze out some cash for it.
Go ahead, George.
So I wanted to run quickly. I know you may be wanting to get a card for 250, but just make sure that if you want to do multiple encoding, that's not going to work for you. So just be aware of that.
Great. Next question.
And actually, it's from George. Alex, any major updates to the AWS Link?
Why, yes, there are. I feel like you threw me a softball. Yeah. So the big updates the updates since the last time we probably talked about it is that I don't know if we talked about the fact that it now supports 8 channels. For us, it's 8 languages, but 8 channels of audio. So it'll only take the bottom 8. So you can't select, if you have 16 channels coming in, it's a little bit more complicated, but you can push 8 channels up. And so for those of you thinking about, like, the reason 8 channels is important is that's a stereo pair and the UN6. So we can get, you can do all the, basic languaging, uplink with one video and lots of audio, and then split it all up in AWS. The other updates are that links can now be connected to an input as primary and backup. So before it was like a straight through, and you couldn't do 2 links and have them really connected to each other as an input. And that has been fixed. And so that you can now use them as primary backups, which is really pretty awesome for higher level events. And then also the links now can be connected to an input, connected to 4 different inputs at a time. And what that means is that one of the problems we had is you connect a link to an event, and then it's connected to that, it's connected to that, or connected to that input. You can't, you'd have to keep on disconnecting the link from that input to use it somewhere else, and it would reset your settings, especially if you're doing things like captions and other things. It would change all the settings. So now you can connect it up to 4, and what that means is you can start adding these inputs into other things, and so you can have your test system versus your backup versus your, and you can have multiple things that are all looking at those links and coming in. And so all of those things combined definitely is mature. I mean, it's definitely my preferred way of, like, easy streaming to the cloud is definitely the link at this point for what I'm doing. I mean, obviously I do more complicated streams that there's only a couple encoders in the world that we can use, actually 2. So I for a lot of my stuff I'm using those, but for anything that's like, oh, I just want to encode, the link is great. The only downside of the link right now is still for me, the big downside is the fact that it when you start a stream, it has to resource the event, and that takes 1 minute and 16 seconds instead of 10, 5 or 10 seconds of when you turn on your encoder. So for people who want to do a Facebook Live and have it start immediately, you either have to it's not a great solution for that unless you have some kind of pre-show and again, if you're going to Facebook Live and you have it in preview, it doesn't matter. Like minute and 16 seconds shouldn't matter in almost all settings, but you just have to know that it's there. If someone's if they're doing an auto stream, it's a little bit slow. Go ahead, George.
So reason I'm asking about it, obviously the past couple of weeks I've been just in the back end deploying, taking down a bunch of AWS Media Live setups and pushing it out to CloudFront just for testing. And you're absolutely right. The minute and 16 seconds or so, it's a killer if you push into YouTube and so forth, because you got to wait so long for that
but again,
event to spin up.
If you're in preview in YouTube, I mean, the way I do it, I don't have YouTube allocate a live stream as it's getting bits. I always have it set up so that a half an hour before the event, I have it running to a preview, and I'm watching that, and I'm watching health, and to be honest, what I typically do is I usually have an unlisted event that matches my main event, same ingest point, and I stream to both of them. I turn my unlisted on. So my unlisted is on YouTube so that I can see everything working on the same ingest point all the time. And that's an hour before the event. So I'm just watching it and making sure that nothing's happening. I'm playing things out. So the minute and 16 seconds to me doesn't mean anything because I started an hour before. Now I didn't start the live stream because that's when I hit go live on YouTube. So that's the difference for me, is that I think that the whole idea of having a live event start on a social media platform when it's getting its first packets is reckless. I never do that. I just think it's crazy to do that because you don't know how it's going to turn out. You don't know if it's working. You don't know anything about that stream when you push it out, and there's no way to create a clean start that way. So the minute and 16 seconds doesn't mean anything to me, but I have clients that really attach to that. And so it's, we still do it, but I do it under protest. so, I'm like, this is a horrible idea, but we'll still do it, and I try to outline every time we do it that it's a bad idea, but we still do it occasionally. Anyway, but I recommend always getting the stream up there, previewing the stream, making sure that you hear audio, making sure you see video. You want to see it over time. You want to see excellent connection the whole time. You want things that are an image that's moving, so not just a still. You want music or some kind of sound. Those are all things. And again, we've talked about this in the perfect world is you have a pre-show. You pop up, you have a pre-show, you give people time to, you're testing your audio chain, you're testing everything else, but you're also entertaining people and getting them warmed up for the show. So anyway, it's a long answer, I know. Anyway, next question.
And actually, George had another one in, so I moved it up there. Anyone having issues with Meetings NDI out?
I'm not having any issues with it at all. Of course, I'm not using it. What issues are you having, George?
I've been testing it, but obviously, like most of us, I track most of the forums, and it's getting back to what Alex always says. I mean, we're kind of a lot of us are using Vmix, but we're trying to do too much with it. So you have folks that are trying to bring down 10 streams of NDI from meetings into Vmix, and it's just bringing. I'm really embracing Alex's 50% rule of your CPU, but trying to bring 11 sources of meetings into Vmix, it's going to bring your machine down to a crawl.
Well, and also but that audio is still being shared, right? So you're getting 11 sources of video, but it's all shared audio. So to me, 90% of the value of ISOs is the fact that I can ISO the audio. And you're still getting shared audio inside of Zoom, and that kind of defeats most of what the advantages are. Go ahead, Doug, and then Jeffrey.
Yeah, so I was a TD, one of 4 TDs on a show for IAB. And so we were all running Vmix machines in the cloud and then sending it to the fourth one was the master. And they started out using NDI, but then we reverted to SRT streams because I think because of the audio. And yeah, it was kind of hairy, onboarding 5-6 people and then sending them to another system all in the cloud. But yeah, SRT seemed to be a better solution than NDI.
Yep. Jeffrey?
How many people can you have in a Microsoft Teams session?
I think this was a Zoom session.
No, he said.
Oh, Microsoft. You were doing Microsoft.
This is meetings.
Oh, meetings.
Um,
Yeah. Oh, meetings.
Oh, that's
Google Meet.
Google
Wait,
Meet.
Meet.
I'm sorry, Microsoft.
Oh, Microsoft.
Teams.
Okay,
Sorry.
So Microsoft. Okay. Yeah. How many can you have? NDIs can you have from a Microsoft Teams, or do you have to use more than one?
I've only done 5 so far. I haven't done 11, but I am honestly, clients I'm dealing with right now, I'm trying not to go over 6 ingests.
Yeah.
Just for my sanity.
Yeah,
Well,
ahead,
if you
Sky.
do, even if you do 4 with 4 NDIs, I would try and get it onto 2 computers, 2 from one, 2 from another, and then a third computer to actually receive everything. That would be my suggestion.
And it just depends on the profile. Like, I'm pretty adamant about on our systems, we just have one person on each machine. And it just works really well. I know it's more expensive. I know it takes more time. One of the things I'm going to be testing, I said I wasn't going to do this on Twitter. I think I mentioned this yesterday, but I'm going to go ahead and buy one of the new Mac Minis with the new chipset because I have a theory that it could be an incredible Zoom room meeting platform. I think that it's for the price, performance, everything else. It might outdo all the PCs that I got for this. So in size and performance, if you look at the numbers that it's running, I think that I might be able to get much more out of it than that. So I'm going to be testing it probably next week or the week after. Go ahead, Sky, and then Mickey.
Yes, George. For the Teams meeting that we did for the Teams company, we had 10 different computers, and each of them would bring in 2 different people at different parts of the conversation. And then I would manage, this person gets to be spotlighted on that system, then we'd run it straight into the TriCaster. And then once that person was done, the next computer would be who we'd throw to because they were already queued up. So we had 3 sets of alternating who gets to be spotlighted and then sent to the TriCaster. We ended up using TriCaster. That was the tool that did the broadcast back to the global Teams meeting. That's how we managed it. And we had at one point, we had 20 people coming in, but it was staggered. Some machines had like 3 people that then we would spotlight as they were coming up in the agenda. So that's a way.
Mickey?
Yeah, can NDI on Vmix leverage multiple GPUs? Because if so, then maybe just add another RTX.
I don't know. I don't know if it can. I should be able to, but I don't know for sure. Next question.
Jonas Dottel of Reutlingen says, when doing a Dolby Atmos video, do I understand right that you start with a multi-track record and then the additional sounds like birds and so forth come in as objects on top?
And just to say, it's technically Dolby Atmos audio, not video, but it can be a video with Dolby Atmos. Mickey, do you want to talk about beds versus objects?
So I was thinking along the lines of I think it's a big misconception in terms of when it comes to surround mixing in general that you have to start off with a surround recording, like a recording done with a 5.0 or a 5.1 microphone. Majority of films, the elements are built out of mono and stereo recordings, maybe a few 5.0, 5.1 checks, especially for ambiances, but primarily mono and stereo. But specifically with Atmos, yes, you do start out with, as Alex mentioned, beds. It could be a 5.1, 7.1 bed, which is the basic like old school channel based mix. And then on top of those beds, you add in those individual like objects that you want to really specify where it appears in the room, where it appears to come from in the room.
Next question.
Moving on, we actually have a couple of them. Doug Ferguson here on the panel from Fort Wayne, Indiana. What do you do when presenters tell you that they won't use comms and suggest that you can text them during a show?
It's just hard. It's hard to text. They'll either not hear you or they are distracted all the time. So text during the show is really a painful process there. I mean, the big thing is that's again, the reason that we use isolated connections is because we can then send audio back to somebody directly without them having to add any extra pieces. But the problem with text during shows is that you have people looking down all the time or not responding. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, we've had that in some of our small events that we do. And it has like maybe 70% of the time it would be okay, nothing wrong happens, but some of the shows that we've done wherein they wanted text, it turned into a dumpster fire. So the next time we had a meeting with them, we say, this is why we want to be able to communicate directly with you, so you can vamp if we're trying to fix something and all that.
When I started doing all of this, I remember that someone saying, well, we're going to need three PL channels. And I'm like, why would we ever need three PL channels? Like I remember saying that, like that came out of my mouth. And at this point, live events to me, a huge piece of the architecture is comms. Like that is like comms to the talent, comms to the individuals, comms to the team. And we build intricate, massive and intricate collections of point-to-point connections so that I can talk to one person over there, as well as PL and layers of PLs and generals and everything else that are all there. And the better you get at that, the more cleanly there's a lot of shows you can kind of survive, but if it's a complex show, those comms, everything just kind of rolls along and everyone's talking to each other and everything. And most important, you don't build systems for sunny days, you build them for rainy days, and when something goes wrong, our ability to, like, for instance, because we have all this communication back to every participant in our show or every host or every speaker, we've had issues where something goes down and we say, hey, I need you to talk for a little bit. Joe is now not available. Just keep talking. And then they keep talking. And then we move over, we pull this person back in. Hey, I'm going to drop you out, bring you back in. We handle all that stuff. And all that's being done in the background. And the viewer has no idea that's happening at all. But you can't, if you take out the comms, you can't do that. Go ahead, Courtney, and then Peter.
Yeah, Doug, I would just tell them that you can use text if they have a personal assistant that's standing right outside the frame.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, Peter.
Well, the other part of that, I absolutely agree with Courtney, but I learned, or some of my friends learned the hard way as we're running a volunteer event, and I had to remind them that no texting system is synchronous.
Right. Yep. Doug.
Yeah, and I even had Tucker. Our Tucker helped me set up a great little comm system. It's just two different parts of a show. It's an hour-long show, but both of them like, no, we don't want to use it. Like, we don't want to put an earbud in, and it was just like, okay, I set this up, and then all of a sudden, like, yeah, we're not going to use it. You can text me. Like, well, that's going to be horrible. And
well, a lot of times what I've pulled back on saying it as often as I do, but sometimes we'll have emails where I just recommend something and I say, and if something goes wrong, we'll return to this email. like we're going to return to this, and I don't say it anymore, but the email is out there definitely as I don't have those conversations over a phone. Like, they will always get an email sent with me ardently recommending something and then saying, if we don't do this, these are the things that will go wrong. You'll have a problem during the show and you won't be able to handle it. And And so when they get to the end of it and they say, well, what happened? Well, we talked about that. I think, no, we didn't. And then you send the email back and you go, yeah, we did. I told you this is a bad idea. And so, but the comms are everything. And again, the other thing is people have this idea that you're going to talk into their ear all the time. And it is important that if you put talent on comms, you are responsible as a producer or whatever to never talk to them while they're talking, ever. Like, unless they are literally saying something that'll put them in legal risk, you never talk to talent while they're talking, ever. And you let them finish whatever they're going to say. You have to time what you're going to say based on when they're not concentrating. There has to be this thing where you, as a producer, why talent pull those things out of their ears, and you'll see it on news. You'll see someone go like, just pull this out of their ear, and that's telling the producer like, screw you, like they're just going, nope, I'm not going to listen to you anymore. And so it's either that when you see a host do it, that's what they're doing. when you see a musical talent do it, it means there's something wrong with it. It's them telling you, I can't. There's something wrong with, like, you'll see, like, there was a shot that Mariah Carey got a lot of trouble for, but you watch before she had trouble singing at New Year's or whatever, you watch her pull her ears out, and you knew that there was something going wrong. Like, there was something wrong with her ears to to have that. But you have to be super careful when you give talent earpieces, because you have unmanaged staff talking into PLs that go into the talent's ear, and it's a huge distraction. It's kind of like when I get sensitive where people do weird things when I do my announcement at the beginning of the show. I get really sensitive to that. Like, and everyone does this, or they go like this, or they put up text, and I'm like, when I start talking, everyone just goes like this. That's what they should do. And the same thing for how that goes. Go ahead, Sky, and then Courtney.
Well, comms, of course, is short for communication. And when you're in the heat of battle, how is the quickest and most efficient way? I mean, you could hand Post-it notes back and forth, and we're doing that because we didn't have headsets. So again, the efficiency is for the sake of the show and moving the message forward. And especially with volunteers that are not familiar with the tools. And so your people that are doing texting, that to them is how they communicate, but not when you're doing a focused attention, need to hold the cameras, need to make judgments.
I mean, the question you have to always ask yourself when you're building comms is whether you want to have a grown-up event or not. Without comms, it's not a grown-up event. It's just, it's amateur hour. Like, not having comms is amateur hour. It's always amateur hour. So if you're going to have a grown-up event, you're going to build comms. Courtney, and then Bill.
Yeah, two things. One thing, I find that when they're yanking the IFB out of their ear, it's usually because they're receiving delayed fullback, and so they're hearing themselves back
for artists.
A latency. Well, even commentators that are trying to speak and they're hearing themselves back delayed about 2 seconds from a satellite.
If they get it.
Yeah, then they go nuts. But the other thing I was going to suggest for Doug, maybe what they can do is just set up a separate phone whose input is tied to your comm systems, and you keep it in for that particular, you connect to that person's text account, and then when you key the comm system for them, it does voice to text. And
there you go. We need that.
You release the button, it sends.
Yeah. I more just go, well, I'm not going to talk about it I'm not going to talk to you until you get on the comms. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I've been announcing since I was 20, and a delayed fullback in my ear will shut. It's about the only thing that will completely shut me down. I mean, no matter how good the script is, no matter how ready I am for it, no matter how much I've rehearsed, if you push a half second or a full second delay back in me, it will lock my brain. And fighting through that is like fighting through a brick wall. It's impossible. So you've got to get this right. And I think everything Alex talked about in the first part of this is mission critical if you want a smooth show, because being on is hard work.
And you can start with just like a phone call, like everybody calls in on a phone bridge. I mean, it can be that simple to have at least one PL that is everybody talking to each other. That is the simplest way to do this. And then the cost now of access with Unity is pretty low as far as what it takes to put people on it. And especially, he's not here very often because he's so busy doing stuff. But if you have questions about it, Tucker is the Unity, Unity mafia. You need wizard. We'll get you 40 connections or whatever. So I mean, he's a secret weapon.
Wizard. We'll call him a wizard.
Yeah, even though I own my own Unity, because of all this, I actually had Tucker. I leaned on him a little bit, and he help me out. But the thing is, both these presenters are kind of big deals in their own world, but they do their own world. I don't think they've ever done a show where, hey, we're going from you then to another and back to you, and then so they're like,
it's a complicated dance.
We just shoot on an iPhone.
I apologize to cut off, but I realize how many questions we still have left that are not education. So we're gonna keep moving. And so as we come to it, note that I'll probably not answer. You have to raise your hand quickly, or I won't come to you, and it'll only be one or two people. Go ahead. Next question.
Doug Ferguson actually had a second one. What are the settings in Zoom for best audio for music specifically?
They are. I mean, there's all the settings that you can now turn on. I believe it's in the advanced. No, it's not in advanced. It's let's see here back. Where is it? Maybe I don't have it. Go ahead, Mickey.
So yeah, in the audio settings in the Zoom app, go into advanced, and
Right.
then you have disable echo cancellation, high fidelity music mode, and use stereo audio if you are sending out stereo, and of course, uh, original sound. Turn on original sound.
Yeah, and so those are the ones that are going to get you the most quality out of it. Next question.
John Preto in Las Vegas wants to talk lighting. I'm installing my DMX fixtures here at my home. Anybody have experience with the Enttec ODE and software to control the lights via a Mac?
Not a lot of lighting people here. So we'll
DMX should be a second hour, I think, Alex.
Yep. Yeah, just put it in the. Make sure to put it in Discord. We'll find some DMX folks to talk about it. I think it's a great second hour. Yeah, we'll do that soon if you get it into that suggestion. So get it in there, vote it up, and I'll do it. All right, next question.
Alex Olignowitz of Toronto says, do you know if there is any way of changing the Zoom email style to include the ICS, the calendar file, as an attachment?
No. The Zoom email setting is very limited, so there's not a lot that you can do. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, if you enable registration in the meeting or webinar, you can get a list of all the email address of people, and you can send out your own email if you want to with the ICS file.
And there is one when you go into register, there's a place where you can add ICS. I mean, the user has that ability to do that in the registration, I believe. But you're right that you then have it separated. Go ahead, John, and then Peter, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, if you go to the Zoom apps, there's a number of calendar programs that integrate with Zoom that give you a lot more power. So it's easily done, not directly Zoom.
Yep. Go ahead, Peter.
I just simply tell the Zoom app to generate an ICS file, and it saves it to my calendar,
right.
And then I invite people from that calendar entry.
Right. Next question.
Sam Greenwood of Toronto says, building on the GPU question, what CPU would be good? And wants a little readout on the current state of AMD GPUs.
Jeffrey?
It's important to keep in mind that the CPU is managing all the windows, whereas the GPU is sending things out like recording or streaming or anything like that. And you can also have the CPU also send out that way.
So what's the best CPU?
So the best CPU is something multi-core. I'm using a Ryzen 7. I know George uses the Ryzen series as well. I think you have a Threadripper, don't you, George?
No. I'm using a Dell machine with an RTX 4000 in it.
Yeah, but what's your CPU?
i9.
Yeah.
Oh, it's i9. Okay.
i7 is the minimum. Like an i7 chip will be is in my opinion the minimum there. And I'll always say the same thing. The AMD GPUs are not as good as the NVIDIA GPUs. They're a good try, and I'm glad that Apple's replacing all of that with their own, because the AMD ones have been frustrating for a long time. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, there's a lot of debate between the Intel versus AMD, but in terms of the GPU, I would take a look at the specific program that you're using and what they recommend to make sure that you're running like proper compatibility and all that.
As a developer, we had a lot of trouble with AMD because of the way it fragments the memory. It just becomes, it's the reason that NVIDIA is, in my opinion, a better solution, because they do less fragmented data, and it's much easier to manage. So that's why and AMD I don't think can get out of that problem. Next question.
Victor from the panel in Brookings, South Dakota says, I'm looking to get a wireless stereo in-ear monitoring system. So far, he's leaning towards the Shure PSM300. Any other suggestions? Also, can somebody explain the difference between G20 band versus J13?
Go ahead, Mickey.
So yeah, those two bands are essentially like different bands of frequencies that you can use with those systems. Being that you are in the US, most likely these would be sub 600 megahertz, because 600 and above mostly is unavailable for usage to the public. But I would take a look at maybe talk to other engineers in your area and see what is congested and what isn't in your specific area, because it would vary from location to location. And also ask them what they're using, what frequency bands they're using, and venues that when we go back to playing in venues, what frequencies they use, so that you can also work with their systems. That you can tune into their transmitters and use your own receiver for your monitoring.
And-
So consult the people in your area, I would say.
And Justin Emanuel said the G20 bandwidth is 48 to 512, whereas the J13 is 566 to 590.
So yeah, just a
it's just two
sub
different
sub
regions.
600.
Yep.
And other suggestions of system. Take a look at the Sennheiser 300 series IEMs as well.
Great. Next question.
Claudio's back from Rome. Is usdz still a workflow we're going to study in the future of the work group?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's coming. Yeah, I'm just getting my feet under me, getting a couple of new projects off the ground, but we're going to be talking about USDZ a lot. USDZ is the 3D format that's being used by all the AR that Apple's using for AR. So we're definitely going to pay a lot of attention to it. If you want to see it, if you've got the new phone, even if you've got an old phone, you can. But if you have a new phone with LiDAR, go into just search Apple USDZ examples, and you'll get to a web page. Tap on an image on your iPhone or iPad on a web page, and a 3D model pops out in front of you. It's kind of magical. So, and that's the future. Like, that's coming fast. Imagine that being in your keynote slides, in your pages slides. It's still early days. There's still aliasing issues in motion, and but it's available now. You can animate it in motion and Final Cut through motion. So there's a lot of things that you can already do with it, but still early days on the quality, but it's coming fast. Now, next question.
Sam Greenwood out of Toronto says, does anybody know of an NDI app for Android that supports screen capture?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
There is an Android app out there. It is relatively old, and the second that the NDI switches from their 4.5 to 5.0, which I have a feeling is going to happen in the next few months, it won't work at all.
There you go. Next question.
A. Mitchells of Washington says, people would like to know if anyone is currently using Octopus software. What are your experiences? How does it compare to things like Companion or Central Control, or to various OSC platforms? And he's got a link there.
Anyone using Octopus? We got stumped. A. Mitchell says stumped us. No, that doesn't happen very often, but we haven't seen it. All right. Next question.
George S. of St. Louis, Missouri. Is there a way to have a list of several different screen names to choose from within your Zoom meetings as an attendee? For example, a name in English for a USA meeting versus a name in Japanese for another group.
Not that I know of. I don't know if there's a way to change it. I mean, other than changing it, like renaming yourself as you go in. I think that's the only way that you could do it, other than having different accounts. I have lots of accounts, but they're all different emails. I've got, I don't know, I probably got 10 or 12 different accounts that I log in as, and it's really easy with LastPass. You just kind of go in and pick the one that you're going to go in as, and drop in, and that's just because I need to manage multiple events at the same time. Next question.
The next question, sorry, my cursor is in the wrong place, it's Saturday, college game day. Who on the panel likes which team? Quick lightning round style?
I don't watch college football. So I guess that's it. All right, next question. Oh, go ahead,
Mark
TJ.
Carter
What were you
is
going
in
to say, TJ?
late-
We'll let you jump in there, TJ.
I was going to say, I like the Harlequins, but that's rugby and they're not playing today.
All right, there you go. Next question.
The last one, I believe, just came in. Mark Harder of Brooklyn says, in your experience taking people on as interns or assistants, do you have any acceptable practices for giving hands-on experience, managing expectations versus learning versus pay? I have found it difficult to take people on and teach them the margins of money, with the margins of money being so small these days.
I mean, usually what we've done in the past is we do some kind of educational program, that's usually a class or something like that. And that's oftentimes a way that we kind of look for people. For hands-on stuff in our offices, we usually offer minimum wage, is kind of like what we do to keep it clean. So we usually offer minimum wage for that type of thing. I mean, in the past, we've used college programs where people are getting credit. They have to get credit or pay. They can't just be a student that's working for free. So those are the kind of things that we kind of try to figure out. you know, how to work out as far as hands-on stuff. I mean, it's a complicated thing, you know, because you know I'm the kind of person that does lots of things for people for free, so that I, you know, because I'm interested in it, or I'm interested in learning it, or I'm interested in helping. I'm interested in figuring it out. I want to be part of that circle. So there's a bunch of things that I do that I'll do personally, but I don't, you know, and usually that's the, you know, we try to figure that out, but it's complicated, especially for hands-on stuff. So anyway, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Being one of the office hours interns, I can tell you that Alex basically just sends me Discord notes saying, "Don't do that again," or "Can you do that?" Or
I don't know if office hours is an internship, but
yeah.
yeah.
As for interns, the one thing that I always, when I had interns, the one thing I always wanted to do is actually create structure to it. So you had one person that was kind of the head of the interns that could relay back and forth to the other interns. That way there's a structure. And they you know, the one person that's been there the longest is usually that intern that does that. But every now and then somebody outshines the others, and then they become the leader.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I ran our intern program for a while, and it's important when you do internships that you give students real work. You know, a lot of people would come wanting an intern, thinking they were just getting cheap labor to do scut work, and they had to be enrolled in the course because that provided insurance. Ours was a service learning program, basically an internship, but it was some of the best experiences for our students because they had real life experience. But it really is a partnership between the university, the organization, and the students.
I mean, the big thing and I've managed volunteers. At one point, I was accountable for about 120 volunteers across, you know, 10 different teams in my early 20s. And the big thing is you have to constantly be thinking about what are they getting out of it? Like, what are they getting out of it? Not what you're getting out of it. You know, the key is that you can have lots of volunteers that work really hard and get something valuable out of it, as long as you, as the person managing that or being accountable for that, make sure that they're getting value. And one value is, you know, when we're getting paid is money. People get paid for it. But there's a lot of other values that can be provided. Learning, community, you know, excitement, you know, access. There's all kinds of things that are as valuable to people or more oftentimes. And so if you're able to provide those effectively for a volunteer staff, you know, you can have a pretty engaged, you know, we were pretty ardent about what we did there. And so, but it isn't about being nice, as Jeffrey will tell you. If people are volunteering their time, it's about, you know, trying to create something great. You know, and you also want to kind of take that into account as well. Go ahead, John, and then Sky.
Yeah, one of my best experiences was getting a call from a person who was wanting a verification of education, and the person was being considered to be the director of a training department, and gave me the name. I said, "Oh yeah, that person interned for you," and the person, they did. So this is a kid who interned at a company, and about 15 years later was managing the department. The other strange intern story was I had a client, I taught at Chico. They had a very good softball team. So I had a company that actually came to recruit players in addition to workers.
Yeah. With all interns, whether they're your interns or they're an intern you're working with, just remember that you don't know where they're going to end up. Leo had an intern, and she basically created Facebook Live, you know, later in time. So, didn't create it, but was pretty instrumental in the whole thing. And so, is probably the most notorious live streaming expert in the world, where everybody knows who she is. You know, in my world, everybody knows who she is. And so, but that was an intern that just came in and started, you know, working at Leo's and kind of worked her way up. So you always want to keep track. Yeah, Colleen Henry. Sky.
Be nice. I learned that early on. Be nice to your intern, for next year she will be your boss.
Yep,
but to the point, Alex, you show dignity, you show respect. These are not slaves. These are not people or things that you own. So I'm finding that my accomplishments in the face of capitalism is working through a gift economy, and it's again with dignity and respect, for a purpose and a cause that's greater for all of us. That's the current contract I have to have with anybody I'm talking with, because I don't have the barter token of $1 right now.
Right.
So how can I help you be better?
Right. No, it's and you know, and you again, you have to figure out how everyone's improving, both the rest of the world and the person you're working with. All right, if there's anybody else, educators have been flowing in, but if there's any other educators that would like to be part of the next conversation, go ahead and raise your hand. We'd love to have you. So we're starting a little late, but there we go. We've got a couple more people coming in. Trying to figure out.
And Alex, somewhere near the end of the hour, probably I'm going to have to sneak out because I've got the medical things with the family. But
Yeah.
I'll be here for a while.
Okay. All right. No, absolutely. Thanks for being here.
Will we be doing audio checks with them?
Yep.
Within...
Yes, we will. Mickey, you ready to take over the audio checks? I'm going to run out and get some more tea, and then I'll be right back and let you do that.
Cool. Alrighty. Hey guys. So you guys know the drill. Put your first name, last name, and location in here in Zoom. And on the meters, our goal is to hit -24 on the short term. So we're gonna start off with Roscoe and then move on to Kent afterwards.
Sorry, had to scroll for those meters. Test 1, 2, and hit. So we're talking now, looking at the meters, and I'm running right about 24, 27, 26, 20. Okay, I'm right in the ballpark pretty much.
How fine a control do you have there?
Oh,
If you
I
can just
boost
give
it
us,
a little.
yeah,
Give it a
just
little
give
bit
us
more
a
there.
dB up.
Okay, I'm in audio hijack, shoving it up as much as I can. There we go.
Alrighty.
Test 1, and am I up out to the 24s? Yes, I am. Okay.
Cool. All right, Kent, and then Aaron afterwards.
Good morning. Hope everyone's doing well. I am in Salem, Oregon, and look like it might be a little bit hot there. And so I'm gonna turn it down a little bit. Did I turn it down too much? Not really sure.
Yeah, maybe
And,
overshot just a little.
Okay, I'll stir up a little bit more here. And I hope everyone's doing well. It's raining here in the Northwest, but it's always raining in the Northwest. So that's kind of the way it goes.
Give us just just a little bump back down, and then we'll move on to
Okay.
Aaron, and then Tony afterwards.
Okay,
Good.
a little bit down.
Good.
Thanks, Ken.
Good morning from Boston, where it's a little crisp and cool this morning. And that makes me feel very happy because that reminds me that it's still fall. So I'm kind of hoping that those levels are pretty good.
Yeah, I think you're in the ballpark there, Aaron. Thank you.
Okay.
Tony, and then Bruce Francis.
Hello, office hours family. How's everybody doing today?
Doing well, Tony. Yeah, give us maybe five seconds of continuous speech so we can get the reading on you.
Okay, so it is a bright and shiny day today. The weather is a little cool. We are experiencing some coolness, which is a little bit unusual because we normally will have some.
I think you're in the ballpark there, Tony.
Okay.
Bruce, and then Chris Clark afterwards.
Okay, good morning from Naples, Florida. I just got back from buying myself and my wife a new iPhone, so I haven't even had a chance to make it work very much, but I'm happy to have it. And it was too expensive, but I still like it. Is that getting it close there?
New toys. Do you have any control on your levels there, Bruce?
Yeah, I can move it which way? I'm reading.
So yeah, you need to go down just a little
down
bit.
a bit. Okay, how's that sound? There it is. Is that working? I'm seeing 21, 19.
So yeah, it's a little too loud. So you
Too
need to
loud?
go
Further,
down,
further
yeah.
down? Okay, I changed my microphone. That may be, I'm using one of those ball type microphones now. I'm seeing red numbers. What does that mean? I don't even know.
So yeah, that means it's too loud. So you
Too
need to go
loud?
down.
Still further? Okay.
Mhm.
How does that? No, any better? Boy, it's going way down now. That's okay. All right. Here it
I
goes.
I don't think I'm hearing much of a change on the levels, but yeah, maybe do a bit more drastic movement down
All right,
on your
down
level.
further. Maybe I don't. Maybe I'm not even looking at the right microphone. I'll double check. See if I
Yeah,
get
definitely
it on
not
the right
seeing
one.
definitely not hearing a change there. But yeah,
Let's
while
see.
you look through that, we're gonna move on to Chris, and then go back to you, Bruce, afterwards.
Good morning from Tempe, Arizona, where it's springtime and planting season. All of the garden sections of the big box stores are overflowing with things that we're urged to plant. And a little lower, huh?
Yeah, just a little lower if you have control
Yeah.
there, Chris.
A new beginning has its seed and endings past and present need. It looks like in the
Yeah, just
ballpark.
one last bump, small bump down.
No problem.
Let's check back in with Bruce. It looks like he took off his headset, his earphones. So yeah, Bruce, how's it going over there? Yeah, not hearing you, Bruce. Like if you can't find a way to control it, I think you can just go back to your previous setup and maybe just be mindful of the how loud you speak, I guess. Not hearing you. Looks like Alex stepped away again, so we have some a little time to tweak. So yeah, I would just go back to your previous setup if you can switch back to it. Yes, John.
Just checking, do I have too much fan noise on this now? I've got a fan that just kicked in. This is a test for fan noise.
I think you're okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, Bruce. Is that Jeff's mother back there over your shoulder?
He can't talk right now, Sky, so it's going to be hard for him to answer.
I'm gonna hand him a Post-it note. That's our comms today.
Did we? Are we all ready?
Still
working on Bruce.
I think Bruce is still working on his setup, but yeah, maybe he can just chime in later when.
Okay, sounds good. So I have a question to kick this off for some of the educators. Are people using Kahoot? Are you guys using Kahoot at all? Now here's this. Go ahead, Ken.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I use it and the students love it. I've been doing it. I've used it in class for, doing review of tests and stuff. But this time I just did it for his class that we just meet all on Zoom, and it worked great.
Aaron?
So yeah, we use it in third grade a lot. Usually we'll show a YouTube video and talk about a certain subject, and then there'll be a Kahoot after, and the kids go bananas over them.
I was asking because I guess there's two of them. There's the new one, according to my kids. There's like the new Kahoot is GimKit. Have you heard of GimKit? So it's GIM, I think KIT or whatever. And my son says that GimKit's way cooler than Kahoot. And I was curious if educators had. I guess he's got one teacher that's using GimKit, and I guess it's a little bit more gamified. He said you can sabotage other students and other things. It was written by a 17-year-old. But I think that what's interesting about this is that when kids start writing their own code, there is this, I think that there's this opportunity for trouble, but there's also the opportunity for kids to be writing stuff for their own, where it may be more like, so my son says that GimKit is way cooler than Kahoot. He's fine with Kahoot, but he's like, oh, but GimKit's way cooler. And he's got, he's like over Kahoot. But I just was curious if educators even heard of this, like in the because with kids, especially now that they're all connected and they're all not together, but they're all talking to each other over mostly Discord, it spreads like wildfire. Like if kids decide something that it's just all like it's the whole like TikTok thing where Kahoot was the thing, and now inside of his school, GimKit is the thing, and Kahoot is like, oh, that's the old one. Like it's just a funny thing. But But I don't know the differences. So I was wondering if any of the teachers had seen GimKit and whether they could compare it from a teacher's perspective, because it could be a horrible idea.
I'm gonna look into it. I'll look into it and maybe do a couple tests with my students and see what
I'd be
happens.
interested to know, like, from a teacher's perspective, is it a good idea? You know, like it may be a bad idea. The reason it may not be popular, it may be a bad idea, but evidently, I guess he's a 17-year-old wrote it last year or something like that. And it's kind of
what could go wrong with software written by a 17-year-old?
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, John.
It lets you do short answers, but the thing that seems that people really like is that they earn in-game cash, and then with that in-game cash, you can buy things or upgrade. And if you get a wrong answer, you get a wrong answer, it costs you your in-game cash.
And is that Kahoot or GimKit?
GimKit.
Oh, okay. So there's a cash element here. I mean, an in-game cash.
In-game cash and shopping, and it's sort of scary how much people will fight over virtual money.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Completely agree. My school started a program this year called Freckle, and it's for math and ELA work, and you can assign kids certain targeted skills based on whatever you're working on, or let them go through an adaptive program based on whatever level they're on. But the coolest thing is that the kids are now asking me, can I go play on Freckle? And I'm thinking, I'm giving you assignments. How is this that fun? And they show me the screen, and like everyone's saying, it's game money. And they're able to pick their avatar, and they can deck them out in masks and shirts and flip-flops. And they're like, oh, I need the sunglasses, so I have to answer these next 12 math questions perfectly in order to get the sunglasses. And it's really a motivator.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Sky?
Well, I used to work really hard to get the rubber stamp on my paper or the little gold star, right? So isn't this the same thing? And to that point, who's the psychologist amongst us that could talk about value and motivation? Because the gamification, okay, Laura's head's popping off over there, because we have become a economy-based concept. And your point about John, money is the motivator, and my point is it?
Well, it's not money, it's competition. I mean, but it's something that's the coin of the realm.
And
could be psychology, could be a rubber stamp, could be a gold star, or a gamified
sunglasses. I definitely think the gamification is important. I always, in the systems that I build, I tend to very much worry about inflation of incentives, and so I think about it a lot. Is that when you create an incentive that eventually it's going to wear off, or eventually there's going to be more of it, they're going to expect more, or that becomes, or what happens is they stop focusing on what you're trying to teach them and start focusing on that thing, right? And so I always, it's one of those things, like I do think it's a motivator, but sometimes I get concerned that sometimes those motivations are sugar highs, and there's a sugar fall afterwards. And so I use them at times, but I try to, what I'm trying to focus on, at least when I'm building stuff, is how do I engage the students about the thing I'm talking about and make that subject exciting and make it interesting and make it deep without any external input to do it, which is the hardest way to do it. Like, I won't say I think that sometimes you just have to do motivators to make that work. But so I don't think that it's always the case, but I always am thinking about how do I have them truly engaged in just because they're interested in that thing. We do a lot of work, in this group, we're interested in this thing, we're not, I don't have a lot of points and structures. I mean, there's things that people might get out of it, but we're not doing those gamifications. And that's a very conscious decision. It's not because I don't have time, or it's not because, it's because I'm always concerned about creating that external input beyond just the conversation and that part of it. And I'm not saying that people get something out of this, but I'm just saying that I try not to create an external input to do that because it to me, it can become difficult. Bill?
Yeah, I think the case study for me in my life, was probably among the first million or so people who were on Reddit 10 years ago, and watching their karma system evolve and morph as they got bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point where people were farming for karma and then reselling that into other people who wanted to start, or reselling whole accounts that had more influence because they had more karma. It just got to be a gigantic, complicated thing. And then they added coins and awards. And I think there's an endless loop of trying to get those non-real world rewards managed, and it just gets out of hand the more success you have.
I do think some of the karma systems can be useful, but you have to constantly fight against manipulation of the karma system. You know, like the karma systems can be used, but you have to be very aggressive. Like manipulating that will damage your karma so deeply that doing it isn't worth doing. Like if you get caught doing it, like if there's and nowadays you can see patterns of people doing it. So we connect you to that pattern, and you're never going to ever be anything in this community. You'll never be anything in this town. And so that side of things I think can be interesting. And let's go ahead and jump to the first question.
Okay, Chris Clark is in here, and he had the most voted up question from the early piece of things. If schools and universities are responsible for the second or third wave of COVID-19, is the role of office hours to advocate for closing schools and offering assistance to education leaders and teachers who wish to up their game in live streaming by their teachers and students?
Well, that's what we're hoping to do. That's what we're hoping to do, is help people, do it, produce these virtually. I do think that, as I said before before the show started, that a lot of the COVID spread is, no one wants to talk about it, but it's school, and it's kids coming back from college, and there's just schools in general. Take a bunch of students that are not accountable are not going to be affected by it, and you stick them all together. It's a horrible idea. It's the horrible idea, to make this work. Go ahead, Laura.
I do want to make one other point here, though, is what we are doing is really great, but we've also got to get the faculty to respond to their students outside of that video streaming or whatever. I'm seeing a lot of complaints from my students now where they're complaining that they want to go back to the classroom because they're not getting the engagement with the professor. It's taking the professor a week to answer an email on an assignment that's due in 2 days.
Right. There definitely has to be that responsiveness has to happen. Go ahead, Eric.
My son's a teacher, and he has organized for appointment only office hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead, Kent.
Yeah, would it ever be possible from this format to do, special sessions just on teaching Zoom at a college level or something? Or would that be something you'd want to see just happen informally on its own?
Well, one of the things that we've looked at is I think that my vision of it would be to do that. The main thing is just making sure we have critical mass. Like if we do it, are enough teachers going to show up? And so we've been, what's been really valuable about these Saturday mornings is getting the input from teachers about, what is working and not working, and what part of my ideas are crazy and which are useful and everything else. So, and I've learned over time that, I'll be proven wrong on a lot of things. When I went to Africa, I had a whole bunch of really good ideas that didn't work at all. And so, in the same case, I'm learning a lot from all of you as to, what's practical, in these sessions. So I'm learning a lot there. Definitely, I think I would like to do it. We'd probably have to partner with an educational organization that's going to get thousands of teachers at one time. It's hard for me to, I'm usually looking for, like, could I attract two or 300 teachers at a time? Then I would absolutely dedicate a whole Saturday to talking about it. But I need to get, in my world, anything less than 150 people is difficult, or at least definitely less than 100 becomes hard. It's just hard for me to manage that. The conversation is very slow to me. Under 100
But if that
people.
could be like an asynchronous thing, where you record it, there's 50 people who are watching it, and then that's what I've noticed, like with our church live stream, and even this, I notice over a week or two, it grows quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so something like that, where maybe you do a live stream with a few people, but then it is archived for people to watch later whenever they can.
Yeah. And one of the things I've been thinking about is just doing short videos that are, really about, here's some tips on how to do that. And So I pulled together a couple of webcams and everything else. One of the things I'm really interested in is we've talked to a bunch of teachers about how to show things, like how to build your own, without a lot of hardware, how to build your own little like overhead camera and show things that you're doing, and then be able to switch back and forth and talk. And so I've got a couple ideas around how to do those things that might be useful for teachers. And so little tips and tricks that I'm trying to figure out. But then again, for me, it's always going to be about how do I build a synchronous class that's 200 people. Now, they may have asynchronous lessons and challenges, but there has to be some way that we have 200 or 300 people involved. Or from my perspective, I can't build what I'm used to building. I'm just used to build, because I mean, a lot of that has to do with what I consider the future of education, which is peer-to-peer learning. So you'll watch me do this in what's about to happen with Resolve, for instance. I want to build a brain trust inside of office hours around certain subjects that I think are going to advance our members ahead of everybody else, right? So one of those things is Dolby Vision. Another one is Dolby Atmos. Another one is AR, AR, solutions. Another one is e-learning. But what you're going to see me do is we'll do a bunch of things. We've started it. We started having conversations about vision, about Atmos, about those things to get people's head around it. But then we're going to start pushing down the path. Like, hey, I'm going to bring in experts. We're all going to take Ripple training on Resolve, for instance, and then we'll take certain chapters, and each week we'll talk about it. That'll be kind of a Saturday, these Saturday activations. But what happens is it's not about me teaching everybody that. It's about creating a lightning rod that has everybody talk about it amongst themselves. And Chris has talked about this in the past, where the teacher is, stirring things up, but the real power is everybody talking amongst each other on Discord and in these things and bringing the questions up and everything else. But once we get through that, I've got 100 to 200 or at least 50 people who are now over the hump in Resolve and over the hump and then I take them into Atmos and Vision. And the thing is, we get them over that hump. Now we have this huge reservoir of knowledge that's accelerating inside the group. And then it's also any new person coming in is benefiting from that. Like in the same way that a lot of us understand our audio rigs and Zoom and everything else. There's a wisdom that lives inside of this group, peer to peer, that isn't, you don't go to a class for. So what I'm always trying to do is how do I create, but to do that, I have to create critical mass around. I have to have enough people that I can create that, because if there's only 3 or 4, it never works, because they get busy, they go somewhere else, and then it doesn't. There's no, it's not there anymore. So for me to activate that, I have to see, like I look at how many people showed up for the Vision talk, and I make a decision about, oh, we have enough people that are interested. Like that's the kind of. So I'm measuring all these things about whether I can build a core around that, and we haven't started doing that because we didn't. I was trying to get to about 2,500 people in the system before I would start trying to turn internal cores on within the larger core, because there's just, I know from past experience that I needed that many people. Go ahead, Chris.
I love this conversation. I wanted to say that a theme that's evolved in the education portion of office hours is that improved live streaming is not enough. It doesn't equal the solution for schooling during time of pandemic. Yes, it helps, and as Laura and others have pointed out, there's still a human touch and outreach, a whole set of other things that don't happen during the live streaming of a lecture or the seeding of a discussion that people are missing, that students are missing, that faculty members are missing. And so the tricky question is it an office hours responsibility to flesh out what those additional things are that make education and schooling attractive and essential, or is office hours going to stick to our technical expertise and say, well, we're going to be here, we're going to be ready when you come knocking, and ask, well, how can we really do this at scale across the entire public education system?
And we've talked, what we're not so much waiting or just staying in our lane. It's mostly me. What's happening for me is that I'm proposing it. I'm taking what I'm learning here and I'm using it and I'm building these little proposals. And I look at it as when all the right elements are in place, it'll just take off, and so what I'm constantly doing is getting better, but I proposed to one group that I said, that has access to millions of teachers, give me 10,000 teachers. You can promote it. You can send out an email to 1 point some million teachers. I need 10,000, and we'll build something that every day we're doing something, every week we're doing things, we're building all of those things out. We're talking through all the technology. Out of that 10,000, about 100 to 200, maybe 300 if we're lucky, we'll really get it. But that's my core. Now give me 100,000. But I need that many people because you have to, from a peer-to-peer training, which is all I really do. I need that core of hundreds before I can support it, because otherwise it's very much like a live streaming system where you can't have the origin server be hit by everybody. And this is the problem with education right now, is you need the origin server. The way live streaming works is that an origin server has the content and then it spreads it out to the edge. And the edge is when this person asks for a stream, it goes out to a little server that holds it only for a couple seconds. But now every person from that region that asks for it goes to that edge. It doesn't go back to the origin. And what we have to figure out is a way in education to replicate that, which is that there is information coming out, but that person isn't getting hit by all of it at one time. There's people who can regionalize, and it may not be regionalized in the true geographic meaning, but can help with those things as they go out, where they're not dealing with everybody at the same time. And that's something that we haven't figured out yet. Go ahead, Kent.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And one of the things is that right now is a really pivotal time. It's kind of like a pit stop where we're between, at least in university, we're between semesters now. And so one's ending and we're going to be starting again in January. And I'm just looking for ways to help people who are saying, okay, this didn't work. I need help with this, because there's a really narrow window that we have for that.
And I think that, the thing that is hard for education right now, and it's not the teacher's fault, it's not even the administrator's fault, it is this constant wanting things to be the way that they are not. There is this, we really want to come back to classes, and so we're not going to invest in actually making virtual work. And that's a huge piece of this, is that we really, really, really want to go back to physical classrooms. And so we're not going to, and I think that for some schools and for some parents, the idea of committing to virtual is somehow giving up, is somehow just like, if I cede that ground, we're done, and I think that it's some kind of, giving up process that people don't want to do. But the problem is that, the semester's ending, and oddly enough, coronavirus is spiking. I wonder how that works. How could that possibly be connected? The issue is that if we had just last April just said, we're not going to do classes until maybe the fall of 2021, which is probably more realistic. And then we built systems and didn't spend a bunch of money on plexiglass and really dug down and took the $32 billion and equipped the teachers and students and spent money on education to prep them for that. If there was a decisive move to just say, this is what it's going to need to look like, we'd probably be I will argue that we probably would never have school the same way again. It's not that it would never go back to being physical, but the way we think about it would be different. Instead, we're in this kind of half thing, and it's just only going to get worse. The vaccine's not going to make any impact until 2022. It's like we're going to get a reality set, reality check, because even if you had it, you can't make enough of it. And even if you can make enough of it, you got to persuade people to take something that's never been done before, hasn't been tested, and be guinea pigs on something that could kill them. So it's a strong order. So I think that educators have to figure out how to take advantage. And again, we're trying to be a resource, but I will admit that a lot of this is trying to be a resource to the teachers who show up. It's also me figuring out how to, from you, I'm learning what are the pain points? You know, what are the things that aren't working? What are the things that are working? Because that helps me formulate how to talk to educators and how to talk to people when I'm doing proposals. Like, this is what really isn't working, because I am, to Chris's point, I'm trying to figure out how we change it all. I mean, like, move it all down the path so that it's more successful, you know. And there's things that I know that when we've talked about it before, hybrid classes aren't going to work because people have paid me a lot of money, millions of dollars, to do hybrid systems. And there is no number that was ever paid where the online version was as good as the in-room version, or even really what I would consider acceptable, you know, and that's at any price, you know. And so with poor teachers trying to do it by themselves with no assistance, I wasn't able to do it with a lot of technical skill, expensive hardware, and a crew, you know. So I am hesitant to say that will ever work. And that's the issue, but you can't, you know, people will keep on grasping at it. Go ahead, John, and then Sky.
Well, the CSU early on, you know, just said they're going virtual, and I think the CSUs generally have done a very good job of saying we're going to do this right. You know, people ask, what groups do you go to? Our campus has support groups. Our tech people have been working on it. So, you know, not all campuses have thrown in the towel. But it's a big challenge for me. What office hours provides is not so much pedagogy, because there's lots of groups that are doing that, but it's really a demonstration of a model of how you could make things work. So I invite faculty here to say, gee, if you get everybody with good audio, and if you teach set up the culture within your Zoom meeting, you could have very powerful interaction. So they just have to come here and watch it. And the cheap microphones was probably one of the best things, but the other is really how you guide it. You are a perfect model for faculty who want to do good things with their students.
Yeah, and it is a culture building thing, and it's not like it happened all at one time. You know, it's not, you know, that's the hard thing, is it's not like you can just turn it on. It's that we made choices here forward. And I will say, students, I remember as a student spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars on books, you know. And so what we're saying is that the cost of admission, maybe, and if you're charging students $40,000, my whole thing is, for a year, send them a mic. like do yourself a favor, like invest in a mic if they're actually going to come, because not because it benefits just them, it benefits the entire class. And I think that one of the concepts for all Zooms that we have to remember is that everybody is on stage. So how everybody looks affects everybody else. It's not like everybody, it's not everybody is sitting in not everybody is sitting in a in the classroom and one person's up front. Everybody's up front and in the classroom all at the same time. Go ahead, Sky, and then Chris.
John, I also breathe better being in this room. I really do. I mean, you people bring sanity to my life. And I often, from day one, I thought I smelled something, and it's because I've been a part of disaster recovery in the past, of hurricanes and tornadoes and earthquakes, just briefly, not my whole life or career, but the PTSD that happened afterwards. So I immediately went, once the Corona hit, to the Red Cross, and I asked, so after a disaster, what are the protocols? Because when my sister-in-law, who's the CEO of a hospital, said it's called novel because we don't know what this is. It's never been experienced. So that we are being created to listen and practice is pretty magical.
We have the advantage. I will say that the one thing we have an advantage here is that we don't have to keep everybody. This is one of the hard parts for schools, is that, everybody has to participate, whether they're good actors or not good actors, or whether they're distracted or not distracted, or whether they're, and so ours tends to squeeze hard on things. And so that, it's a self-organizing system, which is schools don't have. And so I just want to acknowledge that as far as that goes. Go ahead, Chris, and then Laura, and then we'll move to questions.
For the U.S. Navy to switch from a battleship-oriented force to an aircraft carrier-oriented force, it took Pearl Harbor and the sinking of all of the battleships in the Pacific to say, well, what do we do now? So it wasn't a rational, gradual realization that air power at sea would be a better way to go in that environment than long guns and shore bombardment.
Yeah.
It's the same with education right now, that we've had a kind of Pearl Harbor moment, and we're still scrambling to figure out, well, what's next? We can't do that again.
Right.
Let's do this.
Oh, Chris, that's brilliant, because I thought if this were a fire, earthquake, tornado, we would have protocols. But because this is a different thing, we seem to think we're lost, but we're not. We're still alive. Every day the sun rises.
Many profound changes in our world have occurred because of some catastrophic event. I mean, you can argue there was a huge change in Europe after the plague. Like it was like things changed, in what they did, but also even more currently, all of tape in production, using tape for video production ended because of an earthquake. The Fukushima earthquake killed off the ability to produce the tapes for a period of time that was long enough that the entire industry just got rid of tape because they couldn't do it anymore. They couldn't get the tapes. I was selling SR tapes for $1,000 each when I bought them for $85, and right now there's a risk of that in audio because of the AKM fire, where they may change everything they do because they can't get the materials. And so that's when this happens. Now, when these things happen, it's only if the right ingredients are all there at the right time that this occurs. Zoom happens to be at the right place at the right time. I literally don't think it would happen if Zoom didn't exist, like that we'd move to this virtual thing, because I don't think that the other platforms are close enough to capture the ability, to capture what was needed. They're kind of, they're not great. And I think people would be drowning, without it. And the other people are using other platforms, but the reason we're all using this one is because it's easier and more effective. Go ahead, Laura. Okay. Next question.
Bruce Francis is in with what resources, hardware, software, and plan of action would a college student, a high school student, or a middle school student need to make a off year successful, if such a thing were to be tried?
I think they could do an awful lot with it depends on whether you're talking about college or high school. Oh, high school. Yeah, high school student. For me, it was always just I would say an iPhone and a Mac. like that would be an iPhone. And the reason I say iPhone is because like a new iPhone that has LiDAR, that you can play with things, that you can play with interaction, you can shoot video, you can, there's the sensor on the new iPhone is unbelievable. And I'm not just talking about movie making, I'm just talking about going out and collecting things and building things. And I would say that the creation tools, I don't know if the iPad would be quite enough for them to really be successful. I think that I might lean towards a Mac, but an iPad or an iPhone and a Mac. And then the biggest thing is passion for something. The biggest thing, they have to be passionate about, passion for something that they're going to research and they're going to figure out and they're going to work on, is the thing that still has to be figured out. Like if they're interested in it and they're really, like I was really interested as a kid in programming graphics. And so, in rockets. And so if you left me to my own devices, I'd get up early in the morning and I'd work on all of those things. Like there was a lot of just movement around those things because I was internally interested in those things, those processes. But the hard part is that if someone's not interested in something, so as a parent, you'd have to figure out, or as a guide, you'd want to figure out what is their, coax it out. And I will admit that this is I'm going to say something kind of hard, is that I think we all know what we want to do when we're 5 or 6 or 7. And I personally think that the current school system beats it out of us. Like we just get so overwhelmed. It just slowly beats out of us all this, like, I'm going to force you to learn all these things that you don't want to learn or you're not interested in, and you're not, like, all of these other things that are just the extraneous things that you're not passionate about, I think makes it hard for students that aren't, hard-headed I'm hard-headed. I just do what I'm going to do, and I just kind of ignore everybody else. And I did that most of my childhood. And so I was able to survive that. And I think there's a handful of people that are, but I think that a lot of students get lost in, they don't know what they like anymore because they're fed so much stuff that they don't. Like they're fed and they're force-fed so much information that they don't care about, that doesn't make any difference in their life. And I think that makes it very hard for them to be passionate about anything, and so it's something that I try to, we try, like, if I see any little fires with my kids of them interested in something, I just pour more fuel on it. I'm like, what can I buy you? What can I take you? Let's go somewhere, to try to keep that little flame, going, because I think that school largely extinguishes it, and, builds good drones. Anyway, so Steve and Bill. You're silent, Steve. You got double mute.
Yeah, sorry. As educators, I think that's our mandate, is to ignite that spark. And I think sometimes we've got to go through a lot of different things to ignite a variety of sparks in a room, because it doesn't, not everybody is on an equal playing field or catching things at a different time, or you catch them on a certain day and all of a sudden something turns on. So it's, I think as an educator, it's a little tougher for us now because we're doing it via screen, where in the past we've had our office doors open, or we see people in the hall, or you see them in between things, or you dip into other classes and you can give that one-on-one encouragement. And I think the Zoom tools of what we have are really great, and I find opening class up 10 minutes beforehand, staying after class, or doing I do more and more one-on-one private meetings with Zoom, in order to facilitate that, to see if you could ignite that spark and get it going. Yep. Which is it's difficult. I mean, we're the technology is there, but we probably need a few more tools to help us reach out a little bit better. But I think it's so much better right now. Yep. In some ways. I mean, being forced into this, it's forcing us to think about how we could do what we've normally been doing, but in a two-dimensional plane, which is great.
And I know that I sound crazy, but I still think that I'm going to keep on coming back to the fact that class size is too small. And when I say that is, there is 80% of the information that everyone's going to kind of get with a large class. So get that all out to as many people as possible, and then go into a ground game with the folks that are having trouble, having smaller meetings with them. But the thing is that when all the information is fed up in these small little chunks, it is a huge tax on the system, because you can't do that ground game because you're doing all of this other, you're spending all this time doing, when there's obvious things that you could spend, and you could spend more resources. So again, a class of 1,500, you could have a small team supporting. You can have, to get all that information out, you could produce better graphics and better video, and you could have, it wouldn't be the teacher trying to create all that. It's a team doing that for them, because those when you make those classes bigger, you could produce better classes. You can produce better content for those classes. You can support the students during those classes more effectively, because it's not one person trying to support them. And so you have this whole thing that you could do better online with a larger class. Now, what that leaves you with is that a class is more effective, and you get more people through the big parts of the learning. Then you go back and you have more time to actually fill in on the folks that are having individual trouble, because you've gotten most of the people through it. And again, if we figure out how to do better what we're doing here, which is peer-to-peer learning, 1,500 students, 300 or 400 of them really getting it, and building a culture where they're helping each other, takes a lot of pressure off of the teacher. Like it actually has them all teaching each other, which builds better community. It builds better connections. The people teaching it learn it more. I know way more about almost everything that I work in because of this group, because I have to explain it, because I have to talk about it, because, this idea that you have one person that knows everything and they're going to teach everybody else is a horribly inefficient way to do this. Like just horribly inefficient, where now obviously that you can get the wrong, but if you look at like martial arts, it's all the students are teaching everybody, and the teacher only teaches a handful of, pieces. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, my comment was just going to be because I've seen this happen a few times as I watch my son through his era of learning and education, and I watch myself. Once upon a time, there were a couple of kids in the class who knew more about how to thread the projector and take care of the technology in the classroom than the teacher did. Now you've got a generation where these kids with cell phones are coming in, and literally the entire class knows 25 times more than the instructor about the technology the instructor is using. I remember it happened to me palpably when my son was maybe 13 or 14 and we were doing something, and somebody, I think a young lady in the class, said, we'll take this note, and I started typing. She said, please just give me your phone, and knocked it out in 3 seconds, which would have taken me a minute and a half. Right. And so I don't think anybody in this industry has wrapped their heads around the fact that things have changed so radically and so fast that...
Well, and the hardest part for teachers also is like my kids can out Google them. They'll say something and the kids will correct them really quickly because they Googled it while they were talking. And
that is, I think, an administration up thing. They didn't realize that they had to break down some of these things because this has worked for 100 years. Right. Anyway, but it's not working now.
Yep. Next
it's
question.
Just not.
Yep.
Okay, moving along. Rachel Ann Clifton here says, how are your computer department maintenance facilities handling student equipment failures?
Are there a lot? I think that, yeah, go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, we just have a line outside the library, and they just, they call in and they get in the line and they stand 6 feet apart and they hand them, and most of the time they will just literally hand them a new one.
Yeah, that's been, and what I've been surprised at is talking to a couple of administrators, how few, compared to what they expected, how few people are having equipment failures. That's just, go ahead, Laura.
I have to admit, our university is struggling with this. We've been hit by 2 hurricanes this semester, and our residence halls do not have reliable Wi-Fi.
Oh, wow.
And that has been a struggle. I know my desktop support, which is in my office almost daily right now because of an issue I'm having with my computer, they're down by 4 people on top of everything else.
Right. Yeah, it's a challenge. Next question.
Paul Wallace of Austin, Texas is in with, if you have a 2-monitor setup like in Zoom and you want to capture just one screen, what's the best way to do this? If you hold the window key,
I think this was from really early on in the day before our system. So let's Paul, ask that one again tomorrow. We'll get
okay. We'll push those back out and go to Kent Kersey. Has anyone tried Descript, the app that lets you do some nifty video audio editing? It looks great for making educational videos.
No one has seen Descript.
This was on MacBreak Weekly this week. It was a pick from Doc Rock, I think. And it's pretty cool because it actually brings in, you record your voice, and because I had this problem with the video I just made where I made the whole video and it was kind of ready to go, and I realized there were a couple of mistakes I'd made on the audio itself, and I can go back and redo all this. But it actually has where you can go in and you can just retype it. It does a transcript, and then it will generate your voice. I'm not quite sure how great it does, but then it will insert your voice saying the correct thing.
Huh, interesting. It's definitely something I'm going to check out more. That's an interesting platform. The one that, what is the one that we're actually using in Rwanda for some of the things? Is it called Doodly?
Yeah, I think, well, that will do like, I think that's like that is like a whiteboard animation thing.
But it's a really interesting, it's surprising how people enjoy it. Chris Clark, or not Chris Clark, but Chris in Rwanda is, Chris Marler in Rwanda is using it for, a lot of the ends of their products or pieces of the products, and it as a summary, and it works really well. You basically, what happens is you have images or you have drawings that you pop up there and graphics, and they have a bunch of them, and you can bring other ones in, and then you trace over how you want it to be drawn. So then it draws it as if someone was writing it, and you even put a little hand in there if you want. And it's a cute little way to put those things together. Next question.
Tony Anamopoulos. Oops, did I hit that right? Yeah. From Missouri says, thoughts on the new MacBooks for teachers doing online learning and simple AV production. Air, MacBook Pro, don't do it. I realize it's speculative, but I value your thoughts.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I just was looking at the capabilities during the keynote, and the Air shocked me. The Air with the new M1 chip seems like it manages content, digital content, incredibly fluidly. I mean, they were showing two 4K live videos running simultaneously, and if it has enough to push that many pixels out in that digital thing, it's got to handle audio beautifully. It's got to handle things like keynote and graphics beautifully. I think this is a watershed.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I generally wouldn't suggest going with the first generation of a new platform, especially for generally speaking, a demographic that isn't that versed in terms of troubleshooting technical issues.
I know Jason got a Mac Mini, ordered one. I'm going to order at least one Mac Mini to do some testing. At first, so I have to admit that my view of it was, it's cute. You know, they'll put something out and it'll be a nice little transition. When I saw the stats, I was like, okay, I need to really look at this much closer to what's going on. The stats on it. So the Air, the new MacBook Air is performing better than the highest end MacBook Pro. So it is screaming fast. And the reason is because it's not going out. It's probably the biggest leap in computing. So that the M1 chip is probably the biggest leap in computing in maybe 20 years. You know, like, and it's so now to Mickey's point, it's completely valid. You're walking into a potential buzzsaw by getting the first generation of anything. What I will say is that my guess is Apple's been testing this pretty hard because that's what they're worried about. I mean, the having bad PR around the first time you do something like this would be disastrous. So my guess is that it's probably less than most generation 1, but I'm not sure. But I think that it's, I wouldn't have any trouble getting it for my wife, but I'm around, like she's got to get a new computer soon. But getting one for her to do what she does with meetings and everything else, I'm going to be testing the new one as a meeting machine. To see how that works. I think that the performance on it is stunning, and I can say that I think Apple is about to run away with performance. Like at a level, I don't know how anyone else competes with that unless nvidia uses that ARM system in 5 or 6 years from now. But it's going to take that long. It's going to take 5 or 6 years to catch up with where Apple is, and then Apple will be further down the path. They've really changed the playing field much more than I thought. I thought they were just becoming more efficient. They get better battery life, but what they got was incredible performance. And so it's a really fascinating system process. Sky and then Bill.
So out of the blue, Madeline's husband said it's Christmas early. And so she got, and I got to counsel whether we get the new MacBook Air that's amazingly fast, et cetera, or get a 16-inch because she wanted the bigger space. So I'm listening to your conversation about the choice that I helped consult to spend a lot of money. And I think I feel good about the 16-inch for her solution for now. But again, these different tools to do different jobs. If what is a MacBook Air best use for? And do you try to shove it into all the things that you would a 16-inch? Because
with my laptops, they all have I go into my office and I plug them all in and they connect to a monitor. So when I'm working on a day-to-day basis, I only need them to be laptops when I'm traveling. When I'm at my desk or whatever, they're all connected to a larger monitor. It's the only way to go. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Right now I'm looking at a 16-inch MacBook Pro, so it's less than a year old, but I've got 4 Thunderbolt 4 basically USB-C outputs on it, and that connectivity is very important if you're doing this kind of professional thing where I've got mixers and sound things and I'm making my living with this. But if I was teaching in a classroom and I was basically concerned with that stuff, I'd be in that like crazy, because Apple's iteration recently, I mean, they've been making chips for phones and things like that, so they're not brand new to the industry, and they do test ruthlessly, so there will be problems, but I expect them to be minor. And if something big shows up, I would think it'd be like what they did with the AirPods just recently, where they found that the first generation chips had some problems, so they just replaced them. They just said, here, come to the store, we'll get rid of the old one, give you the new one, we fixed it.
But I will say to get back,
the price point is pretty phenomenal too.
Yeah, I mean, and the new breakouts that allow for multiple Thunderbolt 4s that we talked about the other day is going to really change my dependency on that. I have to say right now, I doubt I'll ever buy another Intel machine at this point. Like when I saw those numbers, I can't justify buying. I mean, I'll wait to buy more. And I have a bunch of computers that are relatively new. I mean, bought them over the summer, so I don't need to necessarily upgrade right now, but I don't think I'll buy another. I don't expect to ever buy another Intel machine after seeing those stats. I don't think I can. I don't think that it would. Now I'll wait. I want to see the MacBook. What I'm hoping to see is a MacBook Pro with 32 gigs of RAM and a Mac Pro or a iMac Pro with 64 gigs of RAM and a Mac Pro with 120 on the board. I mean, not on the board, but on the chip. We see those things, and the performance will be unparalleled until someone else does the same thing. Next question.
Christian Turi of London says, as a parent, what website would you recommend to assign math and English homework to my 8-year-old daughter? She gets nothing from her school.
Anyone? I mean, other than Khan Academy, as far as math goes, I don't know about English, but Khan Academy is where, that was its roots. Were Sal Khan teaching his nephew how to do math, so there's a lot of roots there. And what's the, is it blue green for math? I'll find it. Go ahead, Bruce, and then Tony. Someone will know what I just said, and I just can't think of it off the top of my head. Go ahead, Bruce.
Can I be heard?
You can be heard now. We can hear you now.
I was going to ask, why not just YouTube? Why would that not be a terrific thing for an 8-year-old to learn basic math from?
Khan Academy is all on YouTube. So as far as that goes, I mean,
yeah.
I'm trying to find. There's someone. If someone can hopefully help me, it's like blue, green, brown, or something like that. Is a channel on YouTube that does the math. We were talking about Pythagorean theorem. Go ahead.
3 blue, 1 brown.
3 blue, 1 brown. Is that it? Go ahead, John.
And I'm not sure how good of a writer she is, but the Purdue University has the Purdue Online Writing Lab, AL, and they have a whole section of resources for grades 7 through 12. And if you have to be interested in writing, but it's probably one of the best sites, and we use that regularly with our students.
The 3 blue, as Mickey said, it's 3 blue, 1 brown for math. I don't think it's the end, but it's probably the best math animations I've seen so far. I think that you could probably get pretty good at math watching those combined with Sal Khan and that type of thing. I think but 3 blue, 1 brown is really where we're starting to see the next generation of that kind of content. And the one thing I will say about writing or English is the big thing that I got both my kids already is Strunk and White. Like they have to, I do what I call, if I write something, I do a Strunk and White pass. Like I write whatever I'm going to write. And then I do, knowing all the rules of Strunk and White, I try to go through and, get rid of all these things and put other things in and try to tie them all in. And I feel like I would be happy with most students if they just understood Strunk and White. Like I don't think that they have to know much more to get along in life. And most people don't know any of it, obviously, by the emails that I get. Chris.
It seems to me that the questioner is asking about a site that assigns curriculum, that actually chooses what it is that the son or daughter should work on in English and math. And I think that's a different question than
I think you're
sort
right.
of answered by Khan Academy, where if you have a question, Khan Academy is a great place to get an explanation for how to do the Pythagorean theorem. But this is, in a way, more a curriculum question and a homework philosophy question.
And I will say the Khan Academy does have curriculums built in. Like there are pathways to do Khan Academy as well. So it's not on YouTube, but in khanacademy.org, I believe there's math curriculums that you can follow. Like here are all the videos, and it'll actually track all of those things of where you're at. It's mostly designed for schools to do it, but I also think it's designed for homeschooling as well. So I think that there are some resources on khanacademy.org that will take you down that path. And then I would think about that, mixing that in with the some of the other YouTube stuff that you have there. But it's a good question. It's a good point, Chris. Yeah, it's really, we have all this data, but how do we structure all that data into, and that's going to be the challenge, as we go down the path in the next couple months of trying to grow this group in the area of HDR and surround and AR and even e-learning. What I'm working on right now on the back end is, here's a bunch of reading resources for you to, like, we're going to talk about this thing together. And I think that this is the mixture that's missing, is we're going to have a synchronous conversation on Saturday about something. Here's your homework. This is what you need to read before we have that conversation. Here are the videos to watch. And maybe here's a challenge for you to work on. Like, go try this, and maybe it's not all at the same time, but the idea is that we have to start thinking about, movies and projects that we can work on together and, those kinds of things. So far, we've let the projects kind of evolve themselves, but those have been, but that we've learned a lot. I mean, Tucker, I don't know if he knew anything about Unity before we did the Dalai Lama project. Now he's got a whole business. So it's so I think that's that's where a lot of it's come. Aaron, did you have your hand up? And then Chris.
So one of the websites I've used over the past couple of years for extra resources is matchfishtank.org. And it's a curriculum based off a charter public school in Boston. And they have really good standards that they follow and different challenges that you can give students for math and English.
That's great. So can you say that URL again? Oh, so Christian put it in. Thank you. Matchfishtank.org. That's great. Chris? And then Tony?
I think what the questioner is raising is the possibility that during this transitional time, schooling isn't going to be completely left up to the people at school. It's evolving into a combination of remote schooling and homeschooling, that the responsibility of the parents, or the opportunity, is here for the parents to be collaborators in deciding and finding what it is that their students, their children, are going to work on, as well as the school providing curriculum and instruction and support of other kinds. So that handshake hasn't happened evenly. It's sort of been an either or relationship so far, but now it's got to be a both and relationship, and that hasn't been smoothly worked out.
Parents aren't used to that yet. So I'm even me. I'm trying to figure that out myself. Tony?
I wanted to mention just a couple of things. I think everything that's already been shared is actually perfect. But I did want to mention iTunes University, or iTunes U, because that is still a good resource that's available. And I also wanted to mention lynda.com, which is now part of LinkedIn Education. Both of those places, you can actually go to those resources and detail the learning that you want your child or student to work on. There are actual courses that can support what they're actually getting in the classroom.
And I think that, again, for the lynda.com or LinkedIn Learning, I think what they're missing, which is interesting, is the synchronous, the classroom experience of us talking about it. And so we're going to experiment with that as we go into 2021, where we take on Lynda, for people who want to get it, we take on like a course that we want to learn in LinkedIn. For those people who want to try it, jump into LinkedIn and we'll go through the chapters, but then we have synchronous conversations as we go through those. That's the thing that, and I think that there's other things that can be done where more collaborative, even doing homework or other things like that, where people are going through the challenge, they're on certain steps and they're able to chat with each other at the same time. So I want to kind of play with that as well, as where people can set up quote unquote virtual study groups that they're all working on the same thing at the same time. I think that there's a huge power that we've proven in this thing of synchronous communication. All asynchronous is really painful. You know, like it gets back to what Chris was referring to as this lack of connection and also just lack of efficiency. You know, one of the things when I teach in a classroom, I always pair students, not because we can put more students behind a limited number of computers, but because they will learn faster as a pair. Now, once you get to 3, it doesn't work as well. But pairs, a pair of students will always learn faster as a group in general, on average. Not always each person, but on average across the class, pairs will go faster because one will know the answer and the other one won't. And so you have to be strict about who's driving so that they both learn. But when they're talking, they're going to learn faster back and forth. And then if you do that as breaks, and then you break back, you come back together and ask a bunch of general questions, and then you go back into the thing, that's a really effective way to do it. And it's why, again, I'm waiting for the break rooms to show up on webinar, and we'll hopefully Monday. I'm hoping. I don't have any inside information, but I'm hoping that someday soon we'll get break rooms. We're going to play with those a lot. I think I poo-pooed them too long, and now I'm excited. Anyway, so Sky.
Hey, Alex, I've got to dive out.
Okay,
Questions
I'll take
to
over.
you.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Sky. And then Laura.
Thank you. I would like to vote up two things to be workshopped. I think Final Cut, now that it's not X anymore, just Final Cut.
And we did some of that. So
Right,
the point we did.
But what you're talking about is as far as let's get stronger together as teams doing a thing. That's I'm just voting it up. Just saying.
No, but I just want to point out that we did do months of that. We had the former senior product manager coming
point,
every
though.
Saturday.
That's my point. But the other one was to vote up Resolve, and again, Alex, that was so 6 months ago, and not this different audiences now wasn't a part of that experience. So how do we pass on those good things?
The main thing at our current size, and this is a problem for schools as well, but you always have to think about how big your audience is and what the critical mass is to make this work. And this is the part, again, I'm going to come back to it. This is why small classrooms are really hard to do. I know people think I'm crazy when I say it, but small classrooms are excruciatingly painful because they are so inefficient, like with 15 people or 20 people. Whereas, if, again, and it gets back to I think the server system is a perfect example of, like that you want to have a distributed server system. You want to have, when you do peer-to-peer learning, you want to have a lot of people. So when I look at how many conversations can we have as a group, like I felt like the Saturday sessions was an experiment that was successful in some ways and not successful in others, and specifically was not successful. And there were too many different conversations for the number of people that we had in the group. So, while it was interesting, we never kind of got that critical mass on any one of them. So in this case, we're going to back up and have a handful of conversations. Now, if there's 2,500 or 2,400 people in the group right now, that are in the mailing list. When we get to 10,000, I'll have more conversations. I have to have more conversations at one time because there's a more heterogeneous mix. There's more people to support, and you can blow that out in a different way. But at that number, at that smaller 2,400, I can only get a couple hundred people at a time to be part of a critical, and I need that critical mass. If I don't think I can get 150 people involved, I won't do it. Go ahead, Laura.
I just wanted to mention that there in the universities, the group that does the supplemental instruction curriculum has this pedagogy. It's called Think, Pair, Share. And literally they think about it, you pair the students up, you work on it, and then you come back and you share what you came out of it to the whole group. And I think that's something that maybe where you were going, you could look up and kind of build off of for what you were talking about.
But that's exactly what we try to do with the classes when I'm teaching computer graphics, which is I'm going to show you something, then you go do it, and then you come back with questions. And mostly it's come back with questions is what if you haven't noticed, I'm obsessed with people asking questions. So less statement, mostly questions of what we're trying to, because when people ask the question, it means they're ready for the answer. And no one's ready for the answer until they ask the question. It's why I keep everything question driven, is that there is no hook for that answer. So lectures to me are a complete waste of time, like just burning up, you're just burning in the atmosphere when you lecture, because unless you can do it extremely well. But I mean, TV well. A lecture isn't worth it because you're giving people a bunch of information that they don't have any place to put. There's no shelving for that. As soon as they fail, as soon as they have a question about it, they are ready for that answer. And so what I try to do is I try to challenge people to make them fail. It's how often can we, what I call is failing forward. How often can I get you to fail so that when you come back, and it's the same thing as working out. Working out is not very effective unless you fail. You work out to failure, and then your muscles go, oh, I need something else to do that. Next question is from Lucas Herzog. He said, in higher ed, with some courses, when doing open discussion, students won't turn on their video. So I'm constantly talking to a wall of black frames. Any thoughts on how to motivate people to have their video on? Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, this is going to sound harsh, but get over it. Just talk to the blank thing. It's because really, why do you want them looking at it? It's really, I think if psychologically it's more for us, like we need people to be validating us like, yes, you're such a great teacher. But if you look at it from the student's perspective, we are sort of invading their space, which is their computer, right? I mean, we are entering their computer and then we go in demanding, turn your video on, do this, do that. And I think there's a psychological thing at work there that you need to understand that now that you're on a video on their computer, you're on the same real estate that Casey Neistat is and all these other people. And you either make it good or, just stop expecting them to validate you and just do your thing.
Yeah. Go ahead, Laura, and then Aaron.
I want to second that and take it a step further. You may not want their video on. There have been a couple news articles since we went virtual of very bad things happening and being caught on video at the elementary level.
Right.
And think of it as equity. They may be able to be on the meeting. They may not have the ability to have their video showing. It might be freezing their broadband. Let's level the playing field for these kids and cut them some slack on whether they're, I know Aaron talked about it one of the earlier, are they dressed properly? Are they this? Are they that? We don't need to be grading them on that. It's more about, are they showing up? Are they getting, whatever they need to get out of the session? Mm-hmm. Let's relax the standard classroom rules a little bit.
Go ahead, Aaron.
So I completely agree. My standard that I've told the students from day one is if you're asking me a question one-on-one, just turn your camera on to raise your hand so that they don't just unmute and then it turns into a mutiny. So you have to raise your hand just for a quick second. Your hand can just be in it. I've had plenty of students who turn it on and all you see is their hand and they're off to the side. And then the only other time is for morning meeting when we wave hello to each other in the morning. And then I say, you don't have to. You just have to do it to raise your hand. Because again, just like Laura said, we don't know what's happening in the background. Like we're being invited into their homes. So it's an equity thing for me.
Well, and again, the thing that we talked about before is that people aren't on, they're not just in the classroom, they're on stage. You are asking every student at every moment to walk up and stand on stage in front of all of their peers at every moment. I think that's a very overwhelming thing for a lot of students. Go ahead, Chris.
I wanted to offer an alternative to embracing the black screen as audience, which is embracing your own image as your audience. So you have control over whether your camera is on. So talk to yourself and convince yourself that what you have to say is important.
The one thing that I will say that I'm thinking about in this discussion that might be good if only someone at Zoom could hear about it, is I think that there could be a feature for meetings that the host is the only one that sees everybody in a meeting. So think of this as a hybrid between webinar and meetings is a web meeting or something, or a meetinar. And what it is everyone joins. The host, what everyone sees is what the host spotlights. or whatever the host sets up, whatever the host is seeing in their second screen or whatever, they have an edit. So everyone sees, again, you're not limited, because the problem right now is that in that controlled window, everybody is a participant, right? Or an attendee, right? And so you can't see them. But what would fix this, or to some degree, or what would take a huge step forward, is that all the students are going to join. The teacher and any co-host might see it. So it might be the teacher's assistants and whatever. They see everybody, but the only thing that goes back to the students is what is spotlit. So if you're talking to a student and you spotlight them to have that conversation, they raise their hand and they want to talk, and then you go to them, then everyone sees them because they raised their hand. So you can still have that video, interaction there, but then teachers can see how students are doing, because I think it's very valuable for me with the panel. I probably wouldn't continue to, I very much thought, it's one of many, I probably wouldn't continue to do office hours if I couldn't see everybody. I couldn't, not everyone, but if I didn't have a panel to talk to, it wouldn't be sustainable for me, to have nobody. Now, I don't need very many. This is, 12 people here is fine. Because I get some nods and I get some reactions, and I just see where I'm going, and I feel connected to that. So I think that for a speaker, having that is important in some cases. I've definitely done lots of live streams. I used to do Ask Alex. This is the precursor to, if you go to my old YouTubes, you'll see Ask Alex, and that's all I did was get text questions and I just answer them to the camera. So I've done it. I don't know if I would do it every day if I had that, but I definitely have done those. I used to do ones where people would send me questions, and this is something for teachers to think about. Pixel members used to send me lots and lots of questions, and I would just sit in a sound booth and answer them. I would just sit and just answer all the questions and then put them out as an audio file. And so they could just listen to it while they're working. This is a question from this person. This is a question from this person. This is way better. Like what we're doing here is way better than that, because I have other smart people. I have, other educators here. I have, for Mickey's answering good audio questions, and all these all of you educators are answering things that I don't know. So this is a way more efficient system, but it can be done. Go ahead, Sky.
Well, the long form comedy thing that we're doing is we invite audience members to be audience members, and then we have cast members as characters. And it was a request by the actors that we need that interaction. We, as actors anyway, we need that energy. And the other thing I wanted to say,
but I think this hybrid. Hear me, Sky.
Well,
but to your point though, is this is exactly the interaction that would be really efficient, is for the cast to see the audience, but the audience not to always see the rest of the audience, because then the cast can be seen. So the cast wants to see the whole audience that they're performing for, but the audience doesn't necessarily want everyone to see them. So they would be able to be more relaxed and watch and leave their video on, so they could encourage the event forward. It's a different. I don't think anybody's done this that I've seen.
Well, and go look at Elephant in the Room group on YouTube, and you can experiment it, because we've actually had audience members accidentally. The first show, I told them to mute their audio. It ruined it. It killed it. We needed the audience's laughter to bring the energy. And oftentimes when I had spotlight, the audience was spotlit. And but the point is, it gave the others permission to laugh and interact. And I actually did, as a producer, planted a shill in the audience that laughs loud, because that engaged everybody up and down. The other small point I wanted to say, Alex, was Casey Neistat is awesome. And for the rest of you, if you don't know who he is, look him up. He has just done his thing and made millions of dollars doing it.
And the thing is, he is, that's the person you're competing with now. And so learn one little thing that he does and try it.
And as the influencer in the YouTube echelon, people are wearing the glasses that he just did, and he is influencing and takes that responsibility very strongly.
I was trying to explain to my kids that, Charlie DeMello, she wears the same style shirt a couple times in a row. And I told my kids, I was like, that's not by accident. She got paid a lot of money to do that. She's got 98 million followers, like she's got, but I will say back to the point of Casey Neistat, who we've worked with He's very particular. Anyway, the thing to think about as teachers is that you are competing with the Casey Neistats, and the kids are watching all of these all the time. You're competing against production value. And what I've hoped we've been able to, we're talking more theory again here today, but a lot of times my goal has been to talk about the technology and hopefully improve, some of the technology for teachers, because they have to close the gap. Again, they have to close the gap between what they're doing and what kids are watching on YouTube, because otherwise kids look at it as lesser than. They look at the content as lesser than, and that's and that this isn't that important, or it's not applicable to me because it's not as good as what I watch kids do, not as good as what I watch teenagers do, and I think that teachers this is going to have to be something that, and I think that a lot of this is the education system is crippled by the fact that, the education system right now is crippled by the fact that they keep on hemming and hawing over virtual. That if they just committed to, we're going to get teachers up to speed, and have them be really good at it, they could, and when we go back to physical schools, it would just be that much better, because they'd have all these extra new skills and tools and everything else that they could use. But instead, we spend it on plexiglass that we're not going to use for the rest of the year, most likely. Go ahead, Kent.
Yeah, and one thing I'm finding too at the end of this semester is a lot of the students are just getting exhausted with the things that we're doing, like breakout rooms and stuff. And sort of as I talk to them, it's like, if I have to do one more breakout room, I'm going to go crazy. And so like on Friday, I just said, okay, no breakout room. This is for introverts. I'm turning off, everybody turn off your screen, turn everything off. Here's a project to work on for 10 minutes. I put up a timer and some music. And then we came back and the students were like, that was great. I am just so exhausted, and just having 10 minutes of quiet time. I'm like, if you take a nap, that's awesome. Just do whatever you need to during this time. And they seemed to appreciate that quite a bit.
Yeah. And I admit that I hate group, I personally, as a participant, I hate being stuck into like, oh, we're going to break out into little tables or rooms, whatever, because it makes me have to, I'm not the most extra. I know it sounds crazy. I'm not the most extroverted person. Like, I hang out with all of you, but I'm not, my wife kind of jokes about the fact that I don't really interact, otherwise, that heavily. I get bored and I talk to people next to me. That's the one thing in line. If I get bored in line, I'll talk to people next to me because I'm bored. But outside of that, I don't like, if I go to a party and I don't know anyone, I'm not the person who suddenly walks around and says, hi, I'm Alex. I go, I shouldn't be here. If I don't have someone to clump onto when I go to an event, I will be there for like 10 minutes looking, like not even walking around looking. I will be 10 minutes, 10 feet from the door, looking around to see if there's anything that I can, anybody I can talk to that I know, or something that I can interact with. And if I don't see it, I go do something else. Like, I'm definitely not the person who wanders around, John, and then Sky, and Aaron.
When Zoom allowed us to rearrange the squares, your sort of thought, wouldn't it be great if we could control who sees who, when, and where? And it might be fun to create a little video that shows it. Remember the old days when Apple did the classroom of the future? I think people need to see that. But what you described, with the ability to have the instructor and the teaching assistant see everybody and be able to arrange those videos in whatever way you wanted, would be incredible for the instruction that we're doing here at the university.
Yeah, I'll work on it. I owe some people some Keynote files about a variety of different things. So I'm going to, I'll see if I can get those out next week. There's a couple different features that I've been requesting.
I love Aaron's point to the things that you shouldn't see it in their environment, but you are seeing, and now the challenges you as teachers are now, do I report these things? And these are legal and litigation issues that I don't want to have to, I'm sorry you have to deal with, and I don't want to, but they are. And boy, there's lots of affirmation in the room. But also, I had a woman whose daughter, even up to the age of 12, would not engage with anybody. And then finally the mom said, no, you have to realize an introvert receives their energy by themselves. An extrovert sucks the energy out of everybody around them. So I guess I'm a hybrid.
Some background like this wouldn't be bad for school. Again, when schools commit to it, I think that schools would do really well by sending out, and I know this would be an expense, but we spend money on students all the time, in some way or shape or form. We used to spend it on facilities, right? But I think that a gray background or a school background with an inexpensive light and inexpensive headset mic for the kids, would go a long way. In just everything kind of goes away. And again, they're expensive, but when you buy them in sit, and the students just sit, and that's what everybody has to do, is just put that behind them, and it becomes like a school uniform. I think it would go a long way for schools to have, and we're talking about $100 per student, so it's not inexpensive, but $100 per student could change a lot about how students feel about where they're at and what they're doing, and each other, and all those other bits and pieces is to create that kind of uniformity. I think would make a lot of sense.
A muslin bed sheet. I mean,
well, I'd
No?
do something that gets people excited. It goes a long way. Tony asks, Alex, can you talk about the classroom uses for Dolby Atmos? You've mentioned a few things. What hardware should educators purchase right now? I think that would be hard. Dolby Atmos would be hard to use for general education. I do think that for film education or other things, I mean, there's definitely, things that we're going to do in that area. But I think that there are areas where if it's VR and you have surround sound, that you can feel like you're somewhere. You can feel like you're experiencing something. Like imagine sitting, again, I did some tests where we were like, imagine sitting on the field for Pickett's Charge, or at Thermopylae for, I think of battle scenes, but or anything, but going to the Amazon or going to the Serengeti, the surround audio is going to make a difference. It sounds different and it looks different. But if you had VR on, or even 180 degree with that surround for students, especially at home, them being immersed in that would be really powerful, Roscoe. And again, by the way, a lot of this is affordable if you spent the money on virtual teaching and not on plexiglass that you're not going to use. I'm just going to keep on coming back to that. It's a lot of money that the company, there's going to be another $1 trillion or multi-trillion-dollar tranche of money that's going to come out. The reason I'm going to keep on saying it is there's going to be $2 or $3 trillion that's going to come out of the next administration, February or something like that. And, schools are just going to, most schools are going to burn it up in the atmosphere again, and some of them will actually do something useful with it. Go ahead, Roscoe.
I was just going to say, resolve to learn resolve.
It
runs
exactly.
it runs on old Mac hardware. I have it running on a 2012 Mac Mini.
It's good.
It just works.
Yep. Next question.
Go
ahead.
I want to be on Roscoe's team.
Yeah. Grant Whitehead said, Zoom embedded in the browser has no gallery view, only active speaker scene. So hosts could use the app. Does that achieve what you're looking for? I mean, yeah, except for the rest of it is horrible. You could do it that way. You're right, Grant, that you could do it that way. I find that the feature set is so painful on the web but you are right that would solve that if all the students came in over the web and the teacher was on Zoom. That would solve that problem immediately. As far as doing it, of course. They wouldn't, all the other stuff would be kind of half working. The web is kind of not a great. Is there even chat? I mean, is the chat and everything else available on the web? Because you're kind of a second class citizen when you're on the web. It's kind of like, so it'd be an interesting experiment.
I think it's available on there. Yeah.
We should do a test of that, because that could be a short way of doing that. Like before somebody writes code for it, it could be a way for us to experiment with that experience. But I think that it just came up to me while people were talking, so I don't know, and I just haven't seen it anywhere else. But I think that it could really make a huge difference for teachers and students and everything else to have it be, and students having the safety of knowing that it's only one way, to the teacher, could be a really interesting thing. Anyway, all right, we're done. We're in a little over. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for coming and hanging out and having this discussion. And I really want to thank all the educators that come. Oh, nice. I want to thank all of the educators that come and join the panel. It's all educators, mostly educators here, and it makes a huge difference to have you here, being part of this conversation every week. It makes a huge difference for me, because there's a lot of things that get tempered on. I still have my revolutionary ideas that are a little rough, but really understanding what your challenges are and what the realism of it is and how it goes, and then just the input of what's working and not working on your side makes a huge difference for me, and I hope it makes a difference for you as well as far as having the conversation. So thanks again for coming. Very much appreciate it and appreciate you. And all right, so we will.
Thanks, Alex.
Yeah,
thanks.
Thank you. And so anyway, so have a great Saturday, and we'll see some of you, hopefully most of you, tomorrow morning to do this all over again, because that's what we do. All right, bye guys.
Thanks, Alex, for giving us a place to come.
Yeah.
You help me breathe.
Thanks. Thank you.